Can't hear you. One sec. Try it now. Try it now. Can't hear. Nothing. It's like one sec. This is ridiculous. Every freaking time. What is my system up? Can you hear me? Okay, but I can't hear you. Oh.
Oh, here we go. I've been on mute this whole time. I am not a smart man. Hold on. Oh my gosh. If you're watching, I'm still here. I am an idiot. This is why I need a co-host, because the co-host can say, Javon, we can't hear you. I was on mute the entire time. That is number one and the most embarrassing things on the podcast right now. I can't believe I did that. Anyway, y'all didn't hear anything that I just said. So let me try this again. You can go to visuallystoked.com. You can pick up Heat. You can pick up Strong, and then you can pre-order the new Heat number 2, and also pre-order Heat number 1. Books should be done within the next couple of weeks. I'm working really hard to get them done.
There we go. I can hear you now.
Yeah, no, that was me, man.
Okay.
That was me, man. That's literally the most embarrassing thing that's happened so far. Like,
it's like I'm losing my mind.
No, it was me. I looked down and I was like, wait a minute. Oh man, because usually what happens is like I'll be logged in, and then I'll turn the mic off.
Yeah.
So that nobody who comes on can hear what I'm doing as I get prepared. So I feel stupid.
No problem, man.
But we good now.
It wasn't me. I'm glad it wasn't me.
We good. I had a whole introduction for you and everything. Messed it all up. I feel real stupid. What's going on, man? What's going on? Mason Easley, everybody.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
What's going on, man? What's going on?
Man, just getting ready for this cold snap here in Columbus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's supposed to get below 0 degrees tonight, and wind chill is going to be popping. So I'm hoping there's no work tomorrow. I'm a teacher, so hopefully we get another snow day. So that'd be nice.
Oh, are you saying get a snow day even if there's no snow?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're pretty wimpy here in Central Ohio, man. If you're in Cleveland, yeah. If you're in Cleveland or Buffalo, man, you gotta it's got to be snowmen or Yetis running around killing people for you to get school off in Cleveland or Buffalo. But here in Columbus, we get like a little icing or dusting, and everything's called off. It's like we can't drive down here. So
really,
that's just how it is. Yeah.
I'm in Connecticut, man. I'm in Connecticut.
Yeah. You guys are on the coast.
It's got to be like measured in feet.
Oh yeah. We are whips out here. Yeah,
before they start shutting stuff down. Yeah. Real quick before we get into it, I tell you my favorite story about wimpy southern states. When I went back to school to SCAD. I went to SCAD Atlanta,
Savannah
College of Art and Design. Yeah. But I was at the Atlanta campus.
Yeah,
and it was one of the few times it snowed in Atlanta, and I think this was like maybe my first week or second week in school, and it snowed, and like I'm just like, oh hey, it snowed, And everybody around me was like, yo, we got to go to the grocery store. We got to go this. We got to do that. And I'm like, guys, it's dusting. It's not even doing anything. And they're like, no, man, we can't drive. And I had, at the time, I got my regular car.
That's right.
I got on the highway. It was like 4 or 5 lanes empty. And I was like speed racer, man. I'm like dipping, I'm diving. I was like, what are we doing? They shut down school and everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And you would think that we live in the South where they close schools out here for stuff we get. It's like, 1 inch. Oh, snow emergency. Everything's shut down. You're like, what? But yeah. So
yeah, a couple of years ago they had a big storm where like people died and stuff. Like, school buses got stuck. Mm-hmm. Kids got stuck. And in retrospect, what I did was really immature. On Facebook, I made a joke about it. I didn't know people were dying. Nobody knew. We just knew that it was like like a dusting of snow and a little bit of ice, and people were losing it. And I had people like yelling at me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take it back. But the next time we get a blizzard, and I see pictures of y'all with sunny and nice and warm, talking about, oh, sorry for y'all, I'm gonna be like, remember this.
That's right.
I get it all the time. Well, let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. I always start, if you watched the show before, I always start with a pretty similar question. But seeing as how you're an artist, like you're not just a comic book artist, you're like an artist, which and I appreciate that, because people don't quite understand that there can be a bit of a difference. There are people who do all types of art, and then there are people who are just like, I do comic books. Mm-hmm. When did your love of the arts begin?
Oh, geez. Probably when I was a kid, man. I just liked to draw quite a bit. A lot of it came from cartoons. I was a big Voltron fan, so I remember my first memory of drawing was probably drawing Voltron. And it was that and Transformers. So I drawing robots, and that kind of kickstarted everything. Okay. Yeah.
Did you happen to have any like outside influences that kind of pushed you into the direction of doing art, or was this all self-motivated?
So when I was younger, so it kind of started with me being self-motivated. I was kind of like, I can draw, so I just like drawing. And I was always that kid in school who was like, the artist of school. Everyone was like, oh yeah, man, draw me this, draw me that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just draw things for people. And then I think when I was probably about 5th or 6th grade, my uncle kind of set me down, and he was like, hey man, check these out. These are comic books. And I remember like the first, and I was amazed by it, obviously. And I remember like the first character I ever drew was Magneto from X-Men. Okay. And and from that point on, I was in love with comics, from that point on. And from that, and that was kind of like the direction I took. It was like, hey, I want to draw comics. And, and when I was coming up, it was mostly Jim Lee. So that was like, dude, I want to draw like Jim Lee. I want to be like Jim Lee. And you see, oh yeah.
Hold on a second.
Oh yeah, I got a little girl. I understand.
Where are your pants? All right, close the door on your way out. Close the door on your way out. He just refuses to wear clothes.
Oh sure, that's my daughter, man. As soon as she comes home from school, everything comes off. I'm like, wow, okay.
You just be like walking around with no pants on. I'm like, come on, man. You look like Donald Duck. What you doing? All right, my bad.
No, you're good. And so that was kind of direction I went in. And if you look at my more non-digital style, I still have a lot of Jim Lee influence in my work. So that was kind of the direction I took. I went to high school, and then I kind of got into more like anime and Joe Mad, and that kind of pushed me in that direction as well. So my style was more of like a synthesis of Western and Japanese Eastern art, and that's kind of like the direction I took. When it came time for me to go to college, yeah, that's an example right there. Boobs are a little too big on that one, but that's fine. I
don't know what you're talking about.
When I would, so I got through high school, and then I was like, hey, should I go to art school for college? And I was thinking about going to CCAD, place where Mike, Ren, Vic, a lot of those guys went to.
What CCAD was that?
Columbus College of Art and Design.
Columbus College. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And
so were you were going at the same time as Michael Watson, right?
I'm a little bit older than Mike, so
Okay.
I was probably a couple of years ahead. And Mike's from Cleveland, so he was in Cleveland City Schools, I guess. And he came down to Columbus.
Oh, okay.
So I was born and raised in Columbus. Actually, I know Vic from back when we were kids. And again, I'm a little bit older than Vic as well. So, but
now I'm over here doing the math in my head.
But I didn't go to CCAD. It was a little too expensive for me, so I went to Ohio State. And I kind of said, hey, you know what? Maybe I should do something like, teach. So I kind of went to education as opposed to doing graphic design or something like that. Because at the time I had the view of like, I don't want my hobby or what I enjoy doing become something that I have to live off of. Because it was kind of like an escape for me. So I decided to go into education, be a teacher, because that was my other love, was history and education. But as I started working in education, I was like, hey, you know what? Let me do some art for money, because some of this sucks.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I get that. I've been somebody asked me once, what was the last time you drew for fun?
Yeah. See, yeah.
And I was like, when my son asked me to draw something, I think the last time I drew for fun, I did Mecha Sonic and Tails drawings for my son.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was like, and that's for fun, like for no reason other than
just for the sake of drawing. Absolutely.
Right. So I get it's tough, man.
Oh yeah. And I think part of the reason why I went the direction I went is because I kind of wanted drawing to still be fun, because I did some freelance projects, I did some stuff for money, and I really didn't enjoy it. It was weird. It was like, you get the job and it's like, hey, this is how much you're going to get paid, this is when it's due. And I would get the job and I would have like a minor panic attack, and I really didn't enjoy doing it. But it was art, and I was like, I should enjoy doing this. Then I was like, well, if I'm not really enjoying doing freelance, maybe it's not the right thing I should be doing. So now I do art mainly for myself. I think Tyler Martin said it best. It's like you're either a comic entrepreneur or a comic creator. I'm definitely a comic creator. I do it more for the creation of it and the expression of it. But at the same time, if I make money from it, that's fine as well.
That's cool. I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I'm a more of a comic
entrepreneur. Yeah.
That thing, that the other thing that he said.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it's understandable. It's one thing that I'm trying to get my stepdaughters to understand, because one of them wants to do fashion and the other one wants to do like graphic design and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is one of the hardest fields to be in. Like, I know it sounds like, what, drawing? No, it's hard. Number one, no one wants to pay you like a salary.
No.
They want to pay you for the job and then get out the way. They don't want to give you benefits.
I think it's called work for hire.
Right. Yep. And so, I'm trying to get them to understand that, it's a very difficult thing, and it can sap some of the joy from art.
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a really tough thing. Before we go on to your career, I'm going to go back.
Sure.
What were your favorite comics growing up?
X-Men. X-Men was a huge one, man. X-Men changed my life. I just absolutely loved X-Men. Everything about it, the diversity, and not just X-Men, but like New Mutants, X Factor, like the entire all the X books. Absolutely.
Which was your favorite X book?
Uncanny.
Okay.
Yeah, Uncanny, and as JM just popped in and said, and with Jim Lee, that is correct.
JM?
Yeah, Jim Lee and Uncanny X-Men. That run changed my life, man. Everything was popping. The anatomy was on point. The expression was there. Just the action. It was everything, man. And then, right after that, the cartoon comes out. The Capcom arcade game comes out. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It was just like that stretch was just incredible to me, man. Blew my mind.
I just saw something on Twitter, and it showed how like those four things. It was the toys,
Mm-hmm.
Jim Lee's run, the something else, the cartoon and the thing all came out within like 4 months.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no, really?
Yeah, man. It was avalanche of awesome. Yeah.
They really pushed the hell out of Jim, man.
They did, man.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, what? Oh, it's funny because Todd McFarlane, by the way, another one I really liked was Spider-Man at the time. Todd McFarlane even said, he was like, when they were forming Image, it was kind of like when they got Jim Lee on there, that's when Marvel was like, oh shit, we're in trouble. Because Jim Lee was like a standard bearer for Marvel. He was the good boy. So, when they got him, it was like they said, okay, this is serious. So yeah.
What's
he was
funny?
a linchpin.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I like Jim Lee. I did like Jim Lee, but it wasn't his art. Like everybody, pretty much to a man, every creator who's come on my show has been like Jim Lee.
Sure.
It wasn't Jim for me.
Okay.
It was Todd.
Okay.
Todd. Seeing Todd McFarlane's art changed my life.
Okay. Yeah.
Like his Spider-Man run, like I liked Spider-Man before, but I love that run. Like I love the expressiveness, which is funny because nothing I do looks like Todd does it. But yeah. I never wanted to really copy it. But like for him, when I saw like Image, I was like, wait a minute, what? So when Spawn came out, I was like, give me that. When Wildcats came out, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But I've learned as I've gotten older, I appreciate Jim Lee's art more than I did. Like, I mean, this is years ago. I mean, mid-90s when I was going to comic book shops and so I'm not gonna tell you how old. I mean, whatever. I'm 41. Yeah, it's no big deal. Going to like comic shops and stuff like that. Hold on, Wild's took over Uncanny. Yeah. I love I love Wild's run on Uncanny, man. I loved it. I love his art style. It's so like different. Like there's not a word I can think. It's like it looks like anime, but it doesn't. And it's its own thing. Like I love artists like that. Like and I think that's probably why I like Jim Lee is very like superhero stereotypical. Now, again, Jim Lee is amazing.
Oh, sure.
But me back then, I was like, well, because there were so many clones of Jim back then. But like, like the other guy, like
Kuberts and
You think the Kuberts?
Yeah, at first, they eventually got their own style.
I always thought that they looked like their dad.
Yeah, I'll say early on they were definitely Jim Lee clones, especially when they first got on X-Men. Like that first bit, like right after Jim Lee left for Image, and they came on to replace him. They had a very heavy Jim Lee style, very heavily influenced. Now over time, they start getting their style a bit back, but at first, man, they were definitely Jim Lee clones. Also, Travis Charest was a big Jim Lee clone too before he kind of got his own little style.
His art style now is amazing.
It's totally different level. Definitely more European influence. Oh yeah.
Another guy, and I know we're going off track. I don't care. I like talking to artists. The thing about the Kubert, when I look at the Kubert's artwork, even way back then, I see their dad.
Yeah, Joe Kubert.
But now, like, it's like their arts. It's so crazy how you could have two brothers who draw so similar and so different at the same time. But like, I'm a big Kubert's fan. Like, I think that they don't get enough credit for being the artistic geniuses.
I just wasn't. I was like, like Jim Lee clone. And but over time though, I really grew to appreciate Adam Kubert because I like his style a bit more than Andy's.
Oh, I like Andy.
Yeah, really, man.
I followed Andy.
We're like on opposite sides of the spectrum.
I followed Andy everywhere. When Andy was on X-Men, I was like, "You got me." When he went to, he did Kazar. I bought Kazar. He did especially when he went to Captain America. My dog, I was like, I'm there.
And see, coming up, man, I wasn't a big Captain America fan at all. I could not stand Captain America. Now I appreciate it more when the movies came out, but I was not a Captain America fan growing up. I thought it was corny.
I didn't become a Captain America fan, and this is why I love talking to artists. I didn't become a Captain America fan until Ron Garney started
Okay.
doing him. When
Ron
Mark Waid
Garney.
and Ron Garney came on, and I am on record,
Yeah.
I'm a big Mark Waid fan. But when I saw Ron Garney's artwork, I was just like, it was so different.
Sure.
It was like 180 degrees from what they had been, the traditional superhero kind of house style.
Mm-hmm.
It was this almost expressionistic kind of, it was a little blocky, but it was like, it was more iconography, like he did a lot of like, he did a lot of like splash pages or panels where it was like an icon. Like it wasn't always ultra detailed or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I love Ron Garney. When I got to meet him, I was fangirling, man. I was like, I don't even care.
Well, see, for me, so for me, my guys were Jim Lee, Wispatashio, Arthur Adams, Todd McFarlane, and of course Joe Mad. Joe Mad and Campbell.
Yeah.
It was those guys. And so for me, so after the Image thing happened, Marvel kind of fell for me a bit art wise. I was like pretty much like an Image guy for a while. I was like, yeah, man, I'm all about Image. But like, Wildcats, even though the art was good, the story was really, really bad and terrible. And then they did like some weird reboot. So I was kind of like done with Wildstorm. I wasn't feeling that. I wasn't feeling Stormwatch from Jump. I thought Stormwatch, in all honesty, I think Jim Lee should start with Stormwatch. That should have been the book you start with instead of Wildcats. So that's what I felt like.
I get that because it's a lot different than because Wildcats was kind of an X-Men clone, while Stormwatch was like different. Like it was different than anything that kind of had been put out. I get that.
Yeah, well, that and the story was stronger on top of that too. But beyond that though, so I was with them for a little bit, but then I kind of felt this is kind of crappy. But so then I went back to Marvel, and back in X-Men again, and then Joe Mad popped up. And Joe Mad blew me away as well because at the time I was really getting into anime. I loved anime. Then here comes this guy with like an anime style mixed with a Western style, and it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it, and it was just really, really good. So I became a big Joe Mad fan. That became a huge influence on my style later on, like like the mid to late '90s.
Yeah, he pulled me back into X-Men. I can't lie.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, what is this?
Yeah,
like what am I looking at? And I'm not a big anime guy, but like I love expressive animated artwork. That's how I would describe my artwork,
Yeah.
But I got to give it to Marvel though. Like I know a lot of people like the initial post-Image Marvel was a struggle.
Yes.
But they had some really good artists. They had a string of like Brandon Peterson came in through the X-Men.
Yeah.
That's when Joe Quesada came up, with X Factor. Like both the Q-Birds, Jay Lee was doing stuff on X Factor. Was it X Factor? I think it was
Jay Lee was doing.
He was X Factor. It was X Factor.
What was it? X Factor? Because
Greg
Strowman was on there, but Strowman was on X Factor after.
Strowman was first.
And then he left. And then Jay Lee got it. But then Jay Lee left too. And then Jay Lee left his thing.
Yeah,
and then
Dan Panosian. Yeah.
Yep.
Greg Capullo came on and killed it.
But then he left too.
Well, he got pinched by Todd. Todd brought him over to Spawn.
Yeah, snatched him up.
But that's what was happening. It was a lot of like I remember there's an artist. His name is Steve Scrosey. Is it Scrosey?
Yeah, I remember Steve. Yep.
Steve, when he came on, when I saw him doing X-Men,
yep,
I was like, this is amazing. And I didn't care two craps about the character, but I bought X-Men every friggin' month. And then he jumped to Spider-Man, which fit him so well.
He killed there too. Yep.
Oh, he was, and he wasn't even on there long enough. That's still one of he should have got a nice long run.
He was definitely underrated. He was definitely underrated as an artist.
Absolutely. He was unappreciated.
Absolutely.
I think he's doing like Hollywood stuff now.
Oh, sure. And honestly, you see that a lot with like a lot of comic artists. I mean, in reality, comics is like one of like the lowest paid art jobs there is. For the amount of work that you do versus like your compensation, it's one of the worst out there.
Yeah.
Like one thing that surprised me was that when I did freelance work for like gaming companies, like tabletop games, I was getting paid a heck of a lot more for a little itty bitty art versus what the amount of money that would get paid for like an entire page of sequentials. So yeah, I mean, if you're like a really good artist, you might not want to do comedies. You might want to do something like, like you said, Hollywood or like tabletop games or gaming in general, like video games. I mean, those guys pay a lot more than comics do, unfortunately. So
I mean, that's why Joe Mad kind of said,
man, that dude. Okay, I love Joe Mad, but that man makes me so angry because he does so many spot books for Marvel. I'm like, bro, where's Battle Chasers 10 at, man? There's no excuse for you to do, Ultimates 1 through 6, do like Savage Spider-Man, Savage Wolverine, whatever else you've been doing, Inhumans.
He probably gets paid way more and there's less work.
He does, but dude, come on, give me Battle Chasers, man. And
man, y'all gotta let that go, man.
No,
I
man.
hate to tell y'all,
I can't let it go. I can't. Well,
that's like asking for Jay. That's like asking J. Scott Campbell for Danger Girl. Like,
but here's the thing, though. It's coming back, but he's not drawing it. He hired some dude to draw it.
I would too.
Joe.
You are independent comic book creator. You know how much work goes into this. If Marvel gave you the bag that they probably gave Joe Mad, I bet you would put your books down for a second, get that bag,
dude,
and then go back.
Yeah, I'm presenting a massive bag, but still, I want BC10 Joe Mad as the artist. I don't think that's too much to ask, but it's not going to happen. So, like you said, I gotta let it go. I'm still mad about it though.
Another one, Jeff Matsuda. He left the comic book industry altogether.
That's right. He
did. There's a lot. I know Steve Scrosey worked on The Matrix.
Yes.
He was one of the storyboard artists for The Matrix, and then I think he was one of the designers as well.
Yeah.
Jeff Darrow too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Jeff Darrow was one of the guys. Okay, we got off on a tangent. We went off on a tangent. We get back to it. Man, we kind of went through like all of the questions that we already kind of like touched on a lot of it. Are you digital or traditional right now?
I'm both. Now for my comics, I do digital just to like save time on work. Because instead of like inking and penciling and coloring, I really kind of do it like all in one just to get it out the way faster. But when it comes to like doing like sketch covers or sketch cards or commissions for people, I'll do old school pen and ink, traditional markers. So it all depends on what I'm working on. Typical freelance stuff, they want old school pen and ink.
Really?
Yeah, they do. They really do.
For the most part, I would think it would be the other way around.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, the physical thing. I don't know why that is. It's just how it's been in my case. I haven't done like a lot of stuff in like the actual video game industry, but like with tabletop stuff, they really wanted that pen and ink. I mean, like they want the physical and they wanted me to mail it to them. I was like, okay, whatever. So. Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Jamari.
You doing a lot of third-party work for people?
I'm sorry. One more time, buddy.
Are you doing a lot of third-party work when it comes to the tabletop stuff?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So this is actually, but I've done it in a long time. But I did stuff for AlphaTar Games. I did stuff for Whitewood Publishing way back, like in 2001. It was a long time ago. I did. What's did I do work for? Like just random people, just like, hey, I saw your work and White Wolf, can I do this? Okay, cool. So, just random things, but that was probably like, I haven't done anything tabletop wise for like 10 years, but yeah, but when it was going, it was nice, but
It's curious since you brought that up. I was, I dabbled a little bit and that's become kind of a hot button thing with when it comes to all of the, third-party development lately, so I was kind of curious if you'd worked on anything that might have been recent. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, more recently, I've been doing mostly like Upper Deck stuff and Rittenhouse, things like that for like the sketch card companies. That kind of took a lot of my freelance time right there. And like I was telling Stoked, man, I really don't enjoy doing freelance. So So like once I got on the sketch card thing, I was like, I'm kind of done doing tabletop stuff for now. And I kind of did that for like the last 6 years, mostly sketch card stuff. But now, I've been kind of burned out with the sketch card stuff. So now I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like not doing a whole lot of anything except doing like pretty much my own comic stuff.
It's interesting here because you sound like you've got a more business-minded aspect of this when it comes to producing, creating art because you've got your own work, but then you're looking at this was like, well, you mentioned the aspect of comics being kind of the lower form of work that you could get for this. So that was that's just something I noticed as well as I came in and listened to you talking.
I wouldn't say lower form. I'd say lowest paying.
Lowest pay, yeah.
I'll go with that.
It is frustrating because the quality of art has elevated over time, but the pay scale hasn't.
Yes.
And it boggles my mind how the industry has kind of allowed this to happen. And like I get how they allow it to happen, but at the same time, like this is why you see so many creators going, you know what, I'll just do like, independent. Because
it's also why you see a lot of people picking up art from other countries, like a lot of like interior artists now are from other countries.
Yeah.
Because their cost of living is a lot cheaper than ours. And so like and even happens on the indie scene as well. On the indie scene, a lot of guys are picking up guys like overseas, like in South America or Asia, just to get that cost down for their book. And it makes perfect business sense. Like I've seen guys from Indonesia charging 25, like it's like $25 a page for pencil, ink, and color, which there's no possible way like any American artist can compete with that. You just can't do it, and they're good. They're really strong artists. But again, if you live in like the Philippines or Indonesia, $25 American dollars goes a lot longer than it does here in the States. So and even Marvel and DC are doing that as well. Marvel and DC are also now poaching people from overseas, because it's just how it is. It's all business.
Yeah. I mean, I get the business. It kind of sucks. I mean, not that Marvel or DC are breaking down my door, but like it's weird how your perceptions change. It's almost like the music industry.
Yeah.
Except the upside for the music industry is way more upside than the comic book industry. But it's like when I first started doing, Heat and my books, I was like, man, I want to try, I'm trying to, I would work at Marvel, work at DC.
Yeah.
And the deeper I get in, I'm like,
yeah. Same thing happened to me too. I mean, so growing up, I was like, my dream is to draw X-Men. And then like, once you get like a glimpse into the actual industry, how it actually pans out, you're like, I don't want to work for that company. That sounds horrible. Like, where people are just drained in the creative aspect. You don't want to do it anymore, and you just leave. You have no control over like anything you create. So for example, if I create a character for Marvel Comics, Marvel owns the character.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would I create a character for you guys? But at the same time, though, you're a creator. You want to create. You want your stamp on this legacy, but you can't have it. And that's
it's like a catch-22, man.
Sure. Like Omega Red, Jim Lee created him. It's owned by Marvel. All those costumes Jim Lee created, they're own. So it's all that stuff, all that creation, it's owned by someone else. And for a lot of people like artists and creators, they're like, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I remember having this conversation with Danny and Morgan about if Marvel came up to us and was like, we want to buy Heat from you for such and such, how much would it take for you to give up total rights for it?
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, man, I got kids. I'm saying they try to do the number.
Sure.
But the reality is like, once you lose control, that's it. And like I know there are a lot of creators. I know Ed Brubaker is famous for being frustrated about the lack of compensation for Winter Soldier.
Yep.
Like he's been very, 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 very vocal about it. I know a lot of creators have talked about how like DC kind of compensates more than Marvel. This is what I've heard.
Sure.
For any legal team come at me. This is what I've heard, that DC kind of compensates more, but it's still not as much as it should be. I remember sitting with Jim Starlin, and Jim Starlin was like, he made more off of KG Beast in, what was it? Batman versus Superman than he did for Thanos.
Yeah.
and it baffles me, and it sucks because I don't think it's necessarily Marvel who's controlling it now, but they were, like it.
Well, I mean,
there are a lot of guys in comics that should be filthy stinking rich right now. That's just my
well, and to be fair, unfortunately, Marvel and DC have a history of shafting people. They just do. That's a big reason why Image formed, because like, Todd McFarlane and the rest of the guys, they were looking at the numbers. They're like, wait a minute, we're making Marvel X amount of dollars. We're only getting this amount of money. Well, screw that. Let's go ahead and make our own thing and get all the money. And, and also, and when Image took place, Marvel was like, hey, you know what? We can't have artists be that big anymore. So ever since then, they've kind of reduced the profile of artists and really pushed the writers. But even in that regard,
now you just same thing.
Yeah. Well, but even in that case now, they're shifting, the team so much. Nobody can has so back when I read X-Men, Jim Lee had probably a 3-year run on the book. And so it was like, okay, this is awesome because this is Jim Lee's book.
Yeah.
And Chris Claremont had a 15-year run. You don't see that anymore in comics. Now it's like, a 6-issue run, a 10-issue run, and then guess what? It's time for a reboot. And so, and that team gets shifted elsewhere. So, but again, that's Marvel and DC doing that.
But I've heard it's a bit of both, though. Like I heard it's a bit of sometimes the creator is just like, all right, I don't want to do it anymore.
That's true too.
So I don't want to make Marvel to be this big bully that kicks people off books. But I've heard that I've heard it's both. Like I've heard like some artists don't want to be in a book for 3 years. They want to do 12 issues and get on. Like I was just the other day lamenting the fact that we don't do long runs anymore. Like the only people doing long runs are independent people, like Todd,
longest running isn't Spawn like the longest running indie comic in history?
I think they hit. Well, were they longer than Cerebus?
I think so. It's been 30 years, so it might be. I gotta check that. I think it might be.
It might. Well, yeah, because I know Cerebus went for a long time, and ElfQuest is still going, ain't it?
I don't think it is. I think it ended. I think it did. Yeah.
Well, it's probably longest.
Google
continuous.
That, somebody.
Yeah. It's probably longest continuous. But
I agree with that absolutely.
Yeah, the indie guys, but even the indie guys are doing like Cerebus 300 issues. So Spawn went past it.
Yeah.
But even the indie guys, like I feel bad because I kind of did this myself. I did it too. I did 3 issues and then did a graphic novel and then did not a reboot, but a renumbering. But it was a reason behind it. You know what I mean? Like it was supposed to be one long continuous run, but I also don't have the resource and Marvel did. If I had the resource and Marvel did, the graphic novel would have been like 3 or 4 issues. So whatever. So now that we're talking about independent stuff, let's talk about your independent stuff.
Okay.
Legends of Azure. Tell us about that. Give us the elevator pitch.
Well, so Legend of Azure is a fantasy comic series. It takes place in the fantasy world with magic, monsters, mayhem, and it's about a young man who goes around doing good deeds with people and trying to redeem his family's name and honor, while becoming a legend in his own right, like his father was. And it's been I'm on issue 5 now.
Okay.
Working on it. Pretty much the second book. Yep, and that's the cover for issue 5 right there, actually. And I'm having a lot of fun, having a really good time. A lot of it's really based on Battle Chasers, because I want that. Yeah, I wanted that in my life, and I couldn't get it, so I created my own.
You're trying to get that fix. You're trying to get your own fix. You over
absolutely
cutting your own cocaine.
Yeah, and the funny thing is though is that when
thing to do.
That's right. Well, and the funny thing is, when I started the series, long story behind how the series got started and all that. But
go ahead, tell us.
Well, okay, so the first series I was doing was Psychic Soldier Kai, and actually I'm working on that as well. I'm finishing that and putting that in the trade this year. I was working on that, and then I was approached by a comic store owner to start a independent company called Legacy Rising Comics. And at the time, Psychic Soldier Kai was a black and white book, and I was on issue 5 of that book. This is 6 years ago. Yeah. So I said, hey, can I bring, this comic into this publishing group? And he was like, well, not really. I kind of want things to be in color. This book is black and white. So I said, okay, I'm not going to colorize all 5 issues. And some of that stuff, was really dated and old. So I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and go with this other idea I had, which was a fantasy comic series. And I started, it's actually one of my characters. His name is Bastille. Thanks, Jam. And the company, I was with Mike Watson, Victor Dandridge, and some other people. And, Mike Watson runs FSK, Freestyle Comics. He had the superhero stuff cornered. So I'm looking at that. I'm like, you know what? I got to do something else because this guy's got, his stuff is dope. I'm not going to compete with that. So let me go ahead and do my own thing. So I said, I'm going to do a fantasy comic. And that's how Legend of Azure was born. And I finished the first 4 issues in 2020, put into a trade, sold it a little bit. And then I was like, well, I think I might want to kickstart it. So I went ahead and I kickstarted the series, see how it went. I made over $2,000. And it was great. And had a lot of fun with the Kickstarter, learned a lot. And now I'm looking to do the second book once Psycho Soldier Kai is finished. So
awesome. Go ahead, Jamar.
Just by the art style, it reminds me of an old video game called the Phantasy Star series. Really. So it's got some futuristic elements to it, but kind of guessing by some of it.
Yep.
Yeah, steam. Yeah. So that's what it jumped out, and that's what immediately that when I saw the art and everything, I was like, okay, this kind of has a multicultural Phantasy Star style thing to it. So now you're making me wonder about you said Battle Chasers is a thing you've been wanting to see, and this is your version of it in a sense. I'd like to
Sure.
Now I'm very curious.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed, and not to knock, anyone who does the genre or anything like that.
By the way, everybody, the link right there. You can go get all the Mason stuff. The link below.
One thing I noticed with the genre was that there wasn't a lot of multicultural characters. A lot of people were white. And obviously I'm not white. So and
really?
really. I'm pretty pale. I'm pretty pale, but
light skinned.
I definitely ain't white though. So I said, hey, if I'm doing a fantasy series, we need some color in it. And I made sure to add all the shades that I possibly could into the series because, I think the genre really needs that. For example, Battle Chasers. Not to knock Joe Mad, but, there's no people of color, in that group, unless I'm mistaken. Vox Machina, great series. Love it. Again, no people of color in that group either, except for like the brown skinned gnome. But I'm not even sure. But
and they've acknowledged their own stuff.
Oh yeah. So
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's a cartoon series on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from Critical Role. Okay, you don't. But anyway.
Yeah, you would not know that.
So, but
I'm terrible.
So one of the things that I did with my series was I said, hey, you know what? People of color read this stuff too. People of color love fantasy stuff. I'm going to have fantasy characters in my book. So that was one of my goals when creating the series was to show that people of color exist in this world. They're people of power in this world. They can be heroes as well. They can lead groups, and they can be part of something fantastical. So that was my goal with the series.
Now, how often do you plan on putting an issue out?
Now with me, I don't really put issues out anymore. Now I mainly do trades. So what I do is, I view issues as chapters, and then I put the trade out because for me, the trade is just a bit more economical in terms of like when I'm selling it. I can sell it for more. I can print it for less, just because it's a bulk item. I did the math with issues, and issues just like, for example, let's say you have 5 issues of your comic, right? So you go into a show and you have 10 copies of issue 1, 20 copies of issue 2, 30 copies of issue 3, 10 of 4, and whatever of 5. Well, now you got to fill up those missing copies, and it just costs money. Whereas if you got the trade, you just buy the trade, and then you put the trade on the table, and people are just buying the trade. Also, we have some built-in, blocker for issues. It's like, hey, most comics should only go for $5. You start going by, you start going above $5. People's like, it's kind of high. With the trade, you can go, okay, you can go for 20, you go for 25, even 30, depending on how many pages you got in the trade. So, I just say, hey, you know what? I think trade is a better, instrument of sale for me versus issues. So I stopped doing issues altogether. Now it's just trade. And also, personally, in my opinion, I really don't buy comics anymore. I buy trades because, I got a bookshelf, So when I buy a book, I read it, I put it on my bookshelf. When I buy like a floppy comic, I got nowhere to put it. I got a bag of boarded and I got to put it in a box. And it's just, so for me, it's trades instead of issues now.
It's
over.
Yeah, I get no. It's not a rant. It's actually that's what I did. I had 3-issue miniseries. I sold that for a while, and then I got to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm tired of having the 3. Let me just put it together as one trade, and then I did a graphic novel. So now I had 2 books. Like I had a 72-page trade, and then a 70-page graphic novel. And so I did that. Jamari was with me at Dragon Con. I was just cranking them out.
Yeah.
And then I went to and did my first issue of Heat. So I was able to kind of go, okay, you can get this and then this and then this and then package it together, as a package. So I still see the value in the floppies because you're going to run into people who don't want to invest the $30. The $20-$30 for the big trade. You run it, they just want to let me try it.
They get a little taste.
Like, okay, cool. Let me get a taste, right? But what I do is the floppies. My floppies are not like I know a lot of people do flop. It'll be like 20 pages.
Yep.
I don't do 20-page floppies. My first issue of Heat was 32 pages. The second issue of Heat is 28 pages.
Yep.
So, but I'm doing them for $10. So you're getting almost a book and a quarter, full color, more than say the person next to me who's doing a 20-page book and selling his for $10. So that's I've decided like that's how I want to do it. Like my books are always going to be more than number one. It helps me story wise because I get to pack it with story, so you get some meat in there. And so, like when you come around, it's thicker than the 20-page book. You're like, oh, okay, there's some heft here. So that's kind of how I look at it. And so by the time I'm done with my 5-issue storyline,
it's trade
I'm
time.
going to take 30 to 2. I'm probably going to do like a year, and then I'm taking after I like the 5th issue, and then I'll stop. And then everybody who bought 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they have limited editions. Because now I do trade and I don't sell little floppies anymore. And so now I got 2 big trades that I can just kind of stack right there. Hold on, let me see. JM says you can build consumer confidence with a full completed story versus a floppy that may or may not. That's right. You're absolutely right.
That is an issue.
But at the same time, I think there's a significant amount of work that like.
That's true too.
If you're somebody just starting out, I wouldn't say start out with a trade because you'll burn yourself out.
Yeah.
I just do one book. Just do 20, 22, 24 pages. Get that one book out, and then you can work on trades. But to
James' point, though, but to James' point, there is an issue in the indie-verse where people are, putting out that one book and it doesn't do as well as they wanted it to, or, they can't find an artist anymore. And then there's that one book and then there's no issue 2. And so that does kind of erode consumer confidence. Because I experienced that myself. When I'm selling like issue 1s, they're like, okay, where's issue 2? And you can say, oh, it's on the way. It's on the way. And they might buy it, they might not buy it. Now, when you got the second issue on the table, that confidence gets a little bit stronger. You got 3 on the table, it's even stronger then.
Yeah.
But I will definitely say that there is an issue with like a lot of people, putting out those number 1s and not completing the story. Because comics is a big investment to create. It's huge, time-wise and money-wise.
But at the same time, I think I would say that most people understand indie comics can be hit or miss.
Some do.
You know, like it like getting invested in the indie comic is kind of like you're making a bet here.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a
all
risk.
right, yeah, like
It's
it's
a
a risk. Like you might not see a second issue for a year,
or
like
2 years, or ever,
or 2 years or more. Like,
yeah,
and I think more and more people are sympathetic towards the fact that if I'm buying this book from this person, I know he's probably got a full-time job and everything, and he's just going to get the book. Like I'm only going off my experience.
sure.
And my experience is like, I'll do a book, and then a year later, the same person will be like, "Oh man, I was looking for you. You got the next book?" And I'm like, "Bam, I got you."
Yep.
And a lot of people don't seem to want to buy books online. They just want to get you at the next con.
I agree with that.
Which is so weird.
Kickstarter is like that too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I've asked my backers, I'm like, "Hey man, how's the story?" Like, "Oh, I haven't read the story yet. I got the book." I'm like, "Okay." Whereas with like, when I sell books at cons, I get that feedback like, "Oh man, I read it. It was amazing. This is this is great. Man, when's the next one coming?" So yeah, I think that face-to-face interaction just gives you a much stronger connection.
Yeah.
Versus like selling things online or even doing like stuff on the web. And
Dan makes a good point though about web. He does make a good point about doing it web first.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I don't think there's a right answer. I think there's whatever you're comfortable with. I
say do it all. I say I say hit it from all sides and see what sticks. Like, I mean, I hit my stuff's on the web. I've done floppies. I do trades. I've done Kickstarter. I've hit it from all sides. To see what works. So yeah.
This is my suggestion for the day. For if you're trying to get into comic books and you want to do a series, and you are doing your first issue and you're going to do a floppy, before you sell your floppy, before you sell your first book, try to get half of the second book done. So that when you go to cons,
that's hard.
And listen.
I hear you, but that's hard to do. But I agree.
Get half of it done, so that when you go to cons, you can show people the preview pages, so that they can see, oh, okay, so you're working on it, and then they might be more willing to do it. That's just
but you're right. The problem, though, and what I'm talking about, when you get that first issue done, that hype hits you. You're like, it's done. It's time to print this bad boy. It's time to sell this bad boy. You're ready to go. And so I agree. That's a smart thing to do. But when that book is done, you're hitting up comic, whatever, getting it printed and going to that show, selling that book with nothing else behind it.
Forget the hype. When you wear out and you just like,
oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah, he's like, it's done, dude.
It's done. I need a break. I need a vacation.
It's a great feeling, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Jamari.
Nah, this is one of these things where I am not as well versed in, so I'm just listening to you all with the with this experience about putting things together, figuring out what's the best situation for you. I know a lot of people, particularly with the younger set of people, that they're very used to webcomic setups now. So they're used to reading them, they're used to seeing them, and some of them even aspire to that, which, this is why I like putting artists in front of potential artists and younger folks so that they have some understanding of, hey, there's more to this than just drawing your favorite character and seeing it. Yeah. So I'm just right now I'm listening to see what other little pieces of information I can pick up.
Yeah. The main thing I would say about comics is that you have to love doing it. I mean, I wouldn't do it for the money. And people say it all the time, say, hey, man, don't do this for the money. That is absolutely true. Don't do it for the money. Do it because you love doing comics. I wouldn't do comics if I didn't enjoy doing it. Yeah, it's one of my personal favorites.
Demon Slayer work too. Okay.
Yeah. And fan art, we'll talk about that in a second. But I would definitely say that if your goal is to do comics, do it because you love doing comics. Don't do it because you think you're going to get rich. Don't do it because you think you're going to get like a movie deal. Don't do it because you think you're going to be a millionaire in 2 years, blah, blah, blah. you got to do it because you love doing comics. There's a lot easier ways for me to make money as an artist besides doing a comic book. Like, I can draw another Wonder Woman cover, sketch cover, toss it on eBay, get like 50, 40, 60 bucks for it, whatever.
Why am I not doing
Easy.
this?
Why
am I not
like
doing this?
in a second. It's like bam, it's done. Or like, I can do I can do a sketch card, sell it for $100, easy. But instead I do comics. Either I'm insane or I really, really love doing what I do. And and it's one of those things where like if I'm not doing comics, I feel like something's wrong. You know what I mean? It's weird. It's like
I got you.
Like when you saw the fan art. I was all the fan art up there, like Ichigo and Demon Slayer. I did it. I got I made money off of it. They sold really well at shows. But when I sold it, and Jam Hunter can attest because we talked about this way back. When I sold that stuff, I had money in my pocket, but my soul was empty. It's a really weird feeling. It was like,
I get you.
I sold someone else's IP. I made bank, lights stay on, but there was nothing of me in that besides my art style. And it just felt empty. And so
I got you.
For me as a creator, I have to make comics because I love doing it. And when you finish a comic, there's no other feeling in the world when you finish that book and your name is on it and you know that this is your work, your IP, your stuff. And then, there's nothing else like it in the world. It's an original that you made. It's such an amazing feeling that can't be replicated by anything else art-wise, in my opinion.
And it's really hard to explain that feeling to people who don't get it.
Sure.
I like the funny thing you said about you could be making money doing other things art-wise, but
more
you
money.
have to do this thing.
Yes.
And I feel the same way. Like, honestly, if I wish I did not feel like I have to make comics.
Yes.
I could.
It's a curse, man.
I would literally do anything else.
I've heard Javon say that before.
It's like a sickness.
Yes. It's messed up, man.
I have to do it. Yeah, you're right. We're storytellers. Like,
yeah, that's it.
I have to do it. And I'm with you. Like when I sell prints, like I just be like, oh, okay, I sold a print. Yay, I made like $15. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. But when I sell like a book, I'm like, bet, boom, bet, boom. Like you get amped.
Well, and also, and tell me something. Is there any feeling in the world better than when someone comes back and say, hey man, I read your book. I love it, man. It's amazing. When's the next one coming out? That just like feeds me, man. It's just an amazing feeling inside. Versus like, oh, dude, that Ichigo was sick, man. I'm like, oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. I'm not saying, oh, whatever, but I'm like, oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. But that feeling doesn't match the feeling of when someone picks up a trade or a book from me, read it, love my characters, ask me for commission, like, hey, man, I read Legend of Azure, man. I love this character. Can you do a commission of that character for me? Dude, that's like the best feeling in the world, man. It's incredible.
Dude, when someone called me a genius at my lab at
validation, that's
ago,
right. Validation.
When I got called a genius too, I've been living off that for months. When I have a bad day, I'm like, you know what? Remember when that girl called you a genius? You're a genius. You're all right. That's
the closest, I guess, I've ever felt of that. The similar is when I've had people say, this you wrote this and it made me cry, and I was like, shit.
Yeah.
You know what I
mean? It's just like pow, man. You're like, okay,
So I've seen, that would be there's some that I've had something similar, some similar parallel of what you all are talking about. This, I need to make this thing. I need to do this, and there's something else you could do with your time or your art, especially with your art, but it doesn't bring you the same joy. So that I totally understand.
And I also feel that when you're a writer and an artist, like when you're doing all of it yourself, it becomes even more intense because, that's all of you in there. That's your interpretation. That's everything on the page right there. So for someone to come back and say that they love that, you're just like, wow. And, I had a person at the show come to me and they read the first book of Legend of Azure. And they said, the character of Marta, who's like the black character, You know, she's an inventor, blah blah. And she said when Martha took down the main baddie who beat the living crap out of Azure and everyone else, and she beat him, she said, you know, that validated me as a person. She said, I love it. And she said, you know, it made her cry. And I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, I was taken aback by that, man. I was like, wow. And, you know, and she said that, you know, she loves the character. She loved it. And she had me draw her a commission of Marta, one of my characters. And, you know, you don't get that kind of feedback from anything else. You just don't, you know, artistically. And I think that's part of the reason why, you know, I still love doing comics. I mean, granted, you know, there's a lot of heartbreak. There's a lot of sleepless nights. It's a lot of work, period. But I mean, I think it's worth it.
But you know, I say this though. I think a lot of it has to do with the insular nature of comics, even more so than music. Because when you're in the music industry, when you're recording, you got producers there, and
you have to collaborate.
You're collaborating, but you're collaborating in person.
Yeah.
And you know, the person, somebody next to you could be like, "Ooh, that's fire. Let's do that." Da, 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 da. You don't know if what you're doing is good.
Yeah.
Like every now and again, like, and I appreciate her, you know, humoring me, but I'll show my wife a page that I feel like I knocked it out of the park, and she'll be like, "That's nice. I don't understand. There's no context, but that's nice." And she knows that I like it, but you know what I mean? But like the biggest piece of validation was when she told me that she's like, because she never really says this, but she's like, "I like Strong, my book that I did," and I was like, I lived off that. Before we get to Jam's question, I'm going to get to young man Savion. He watches the show all the time. Creator, he's a writer. He's always asking for advice. He says, so is it a good idea to plan out the entire book, then segment it into multiple books, and then work towards finishing each individually?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think you should have an ending in mind always. Whether that's an individual issue or like a more long, drawn out story, I really think you should have the ending in place. Like, how's it going to be? You know, how's it going to begin, and how are you going to end this? You know, what's the? I think I'm frozen. Okay, what's the end goal?
You're good. We can hear you.
Okay, cool. Like, you know, what's the point of your story? Because I don't think any of us have the stamina to make like a Marvel style book where this goes on 50, 60 years. I think it's very important for us to have an end in mind, and how does your character get to that end point? And that's how you should write your story. And you know, I view each issue as a chapter towards that final end point. So that's how I view it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I can't tell you how you do it. I know for me, I've planned out maybe like 20 to 50 issues in my book, but I make room for improv.
Oh yeah,
and make room for you know, okay, maybe I want to do this, or maybe I want to do that. I might scrap a whole issue and then do something else. I've told this story before about Heat #1, then my Heat book. It's over there somewhere. It was originally going to be this type of story, and then the pandemic hit, and then the protests and all that stuff happened, and I literally kicked so much stuff out of it, and it became something else. And even the second issue started as this, and now it's this. So I would say it, like, you know, Mason said, know your ending. At least know your ending, and have your story points plotted out, and then just kind of let the creative process happen.
Enjoy the journey.
Right. Enjoy the journey from there. Hold on. JM says, you should always have that roadmap, especially if you're tired or on fumes. You need those anchors or hooks. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
There have been times I've written something and I'm like, okay, I have this in mind and this is exactly how I'm going to go. And I always know now that when I'm doing that, there's inevitably going to be something or an idea or some aspect that's going to come up. It's going to be like, I still have my ending, but I need to have some room, because Now the thing that I thought was 10 chapters is going to be 15.
Yep.
So
Jams has a question. Question for you: why are American comics so resistant to anthologies like Shonen Jump or manga volumes? They can't give up the floppies. Is it the ad revenue? Is there even advertising in print that's worth what they get for in ads online? You want to answer first?
That's a complex question. First and foremost, you have the tradition of Western comics being a certain way. So for them to go to Shonen Jump would then be kind of like a betrayal of how they always done things. Marvel and DC are very conservative companies. They don't want to make radical changes that might harm what they view to be their business model. So I think that's part of it. The other part of it is that Shonen Jump, the Japanese market is very different than the American market. Let's just get that out the way first and foremost. The Japanese view comics differently than Americans view comics. For the Japanese, you have people who read Shonen Jump who are businessmen, blah blah blah. They read, they're right on the train going to and from work. They're, girls read it, wherever. It's just different. Whereas here in the States, it's more like a niche market where, like, it's like for the geeky people, And even though you have Marvel movies, things that Marvel movies and all that stuff like that, and licensing that has kind of branched out to the more of the mainstream. The purchase of comics is still a very niche thing. American comics. Now, what's happened recently is that anime has blown up, like really blown up, and so people are saying, "Hey, I can get more of the anime story in manga." So then they go out and buy the manga. People make the mistake that people are saying, "Oh man, why can't we get kids to read American comics to read manga?" They read manga because they're watching the anime and they want to, get more of the story in the manga. How can American comics get that kind of market? You make cartoons and animation that follow the comics. The problem now, though, is that you have 60, 70 years of story. So where do you start? But for example, when I started watching Naruto, Naruto has one beginning point. Naruto number 1, where he steals the secret shadow scroll and learns shadow clone jutsu, blah blah blah. That's the beginning of Naruto. That's it. That's the origin story. You watch the anime, it's the same dang story. You read the manga, it's the same dang story. And so as you're watching the anime, you're actually, getting the story of the manga as you're watching the anime. So when you start saying, "Man, this is really good. I really love this story," and then say, "Okay, well, hey, Naruto's over for this season, blah blah." Like, well, I want more Naruto. So where are you going to go? Well, dude, I'll go up to the store and buy the manga. So where are you going to go? You go to the bookstore. It's right there. And it's numbered for you. And you're flipping through it like, dude, this is where I stepped off from the anime. And now you're reading the manga. So it's just a different dynamic at play. And I don't really see Marvel and DC doing that. Now, to be fair, I have seen DC Comics jump on webtoons, but they're not putting out like the main storyline. It's like Batman fans or something like that. But it's like its own thing. And it's doing really well on webtoons. But, you're probably not going to see a situation where you're getting like a main Marvel or DC storyline in a manga situation like a Shonen Jump or something like that. It's just not going to happen. It's just way too different.
Jamar, you want to jump in before I go?
I think he's pretty much covered it. The first thing that I was thinking was it's got to be business model situations that's going to dictate that. And like he said, he brought up the aspect of it's something that people read when they're commuting, when they're on the subway, and etc. So it has a different view. We still look at comics in this country, comics, cartoons. It's something that's kiddie. Yep. So even though the people who do like it and we have evolved more, it's still, there's a lot of people who they'll still look at you crazy like, "Oh, you like that cartoon shit?
That's cute."
Exactly.
That's cool. Yeah.
And that mentality and the fact that comics is very much a niche thing, and the comics do not follow the movies, which do not follow the cartoons and everything else. They may take inspiration from it, and you may see a version of that story. But like you said, Naruto first story arc comes out, and you can go back and read that first story arc. And then on top of that, they had so much stuff going on when they were doing the anime that when the anime went dormant for like 2-3 years, I'm sorry, the comic went dormant for a couple of years. Anime picked up, and then they're like, okay, now we're resuming the main story, and then comic took suit. You don't have that kind of synchronicity when an anime, when a TV show or movie gets made. And hell, when they tried to do it with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we saw what kind of mess that happened.
Yeah. And something else too, and that environment also creates a very loyal reader, because as you're following Naruto's journey, the character is growing and changing, and as people we grow and change. For example, in Spider-Man, Peter Parker's been a teenager for 40-50 years. He hasn't changed a bit.
He's not a teenager anymore.
But stop. But what's going to happen is that when they reboot, he's going to be a teenager again.
Yep.
I mean, it happens over and over again. Now with Naruto was a kid. He became a teenager. He became an adult. He had kids. Guess what? So did I. So I have an affinity towards that character because he grew with me. And now my kids are reading Boruto, his kid's story now. And it's like, this is ridiculous. I mean, but it's just that loyalty that you have. Another series is Fullmetal Alchemist. Fullmetal Alchemist was just an amazing story, but it had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it was over. It was done. It had movies after that, whatever, but it was over. And when it was over, you sit back and you're like, you kind of reflect, because the story's not going to change. The characters exist forever in that environment, and you grow to care about the characters. It makes them more real to you. Whereas with Marvel and DC, you get hooked on the story's great, it's fine, but then they reboot it. It starts over again. Or a character just goes into limbo, never comes back again. Or they bring it back 30 years later. Like Sync, for example. Sync in Generation X. I was a big Sync fan, Generation X. They killed him for no reason because New York came and said, you know what? I don't write about Sync no more. He's a boring character. Killed him. He's gone for 30 years. They bought him back. I don't care about Sync no more because he's been gone for 30 years. He's amazing, but here's my question. When the MCU picks up X-Men, is he going to be on the team? Probably not.
All right, I'm going to rant a little bit here. A little bit. Jamari knows I don't do manga. I don't do it. Not because I think it's bad or anything. I haven't found much of it that I like. And I've tried. Jamari has told me some. Try this, try that, and I have tried it, and it just it doesn't connect with me. And not all art is going to connect with
and that's perfectly fine.
I'm gonna try and answer his question. He talked about giving up on the floppies. I think the floppies are an older model. It is an old model that we continue. But I also think it's a matter of instant gratification, a level of instant gratification that's not going to be there if, let's say they decide we're going to do 6 issues worth. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Mason, can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear you. Oh, okay. Okay. So if Marvel said we're going to do 6 issues and then do it in a trade, and we're just going to release trades. So now we got to wait for them to produce, an artist to produce 6 issues worth of stuff. And that's probably what, 4, 5, 6 months of production time. So now I have to wait for this book to come out, and you might lose the customer on that because it is a big budget Marvel.
Sure.
We are so used to every month Batman's there on time, yada yada yada. We are used to it. And so I think that's what I mean by instant gratification. If I'm a Batman fan, I know that I can go in a store and pick up a Batman floppy and get it tomorrow. So that I think is a piece of it. The other piece where there's this connection between the animation and the comic book, where one is exactly like the other, that doesn't appeal to me. And it doesn't appeal to me is because I like seeing non-comic book people look at a property and translate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've become like I want you to stay within the mold of the character, but there are certain things like I give a lot of credit to Ant-Man, the Ant-Man franchise. They have looked at and done so many fresh things that have never been done in the comic books with Ant-Man that have made him like
the movie.
Interesting. The movie. Yeah, that have made him interesting. Guardians of the Galaxy is another looking at something from a different point of view.
Oh, sure.
And I like that when you have that distilled down 30 years, so you can, I know what that means, that, that Easter egg, so I don't have a problem with that. And I know there are a lot of people like me, and there are a lot of people that want it to be exactly like the book. I used to be like that. Sure. Until I realized the creative part about it. Like Iron Man. Iron Man is a perfect example of them taking this thing that we have looked at for 30, 40 years and saying, like the repulsors being stabilizers, nobody was really doing that maybe until Avi Granoff.
Yep.
Ari Granoff. He kind of did that a little bit, but like a lot of the stuff like that, I like that. And it gives new life to books that, to the characters. So like that to me, I would get, honestly, like if you gave me a book, like if I watched the animation of Naruto and you gave me the Naruto book and I was reading it word for word, I'd be like, why did I just buy the Naruto book?
Well, so to be fair about animation. Well, to be fair about that though, so how the manga works though is that it follows the story pretty generally. Like there's little things in the manga that you won't see in the animation. So if you're a fan of the animation, you say, hey, you know what? I want to read the book to get up, a bit more in depth about what I'm seeing on the animation. So it's not word for word, but it's okay. Like the general.
That's what I would. That's what I'm being told.
I'll also give you another. I'll give you another thing about that. So one of the things that comes up with the animation portion of it is who's making your animation now, because different studios. And one thing that's happened recently is well-known Shonen Jump series Bleach has come back. It went into at one point people thought it was never coming back. Yeah. Now that it's back, the old version, you're talking about something that's probably a decade old at this point.
Yeah, it's old.
And the new art and the new animation looks so good. And they've been able, now they have now there's like stories, even though they're telling this older story that people know how it's supposed to end, seeing it come to life in this fashion and seeing them recreate these battles with this brand new style of art and better technology, it's just beautiful to see now.
But my question is, Trigun? Because I thought that
it just put out the new Trigun. Jay just put the first episode out. First one.
Okay. So because the new Bleach is about him being married with kids.
But my thing is my larger my larger point is, why do they have to be the same?
Not necessarily.
A lot of people, and I just had this discussion on Top 5 with a young man. He was like, well, American comics need to adopt this model and do this model because anime and manga is hot right now. And I'm sitting there going like, why can't this exist and this exist and they just be what they are? And because the reason why I say this is because I've been a part of the comic book industry for 35 plus years now. Everything comes in waves, man. Like there was a time in comics where the Cowboys ruled. There was a time in comics where like Archie and Jughead and love stories ruled. There was a time in comics where monsters ruled. Like there's always like a wave or a new thing that people, latch on or become a part of. And I'm just like, I'm fine with anime and manga being that. And if you want anime and manga, go ahead. If you want to make a comic book character in an anime style, something like I know Marvel did that for a little bit. DC has done it with Batman or whatever. Let's do that. But I think the model, I don't think the model is outdated. I think it needs a little bit of work. And I think it needs a bit of reimagining as opposed to let's just adopt everything that manga and anime do.
Well, so I think the issue, though, is that a lot of the youth are more manga fans now than they are American comic fans. I mean, by far. Like, if you go to like any comic convention, the majority of youth, I'm saying like between like the ages of like 13 and 25, they're almost entirely manga fans. And I would say the majority of the energy on the con circuit now are with anime cons versus American comic cons. I know my clientele. People who are buying my anime prints and anime commissions are all like under 35. The people buying Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, they're over 35. You know, so it's like an older crowd who are buying Marvel and DC stuff because they grew up on that stuff. But nowadays, I
get the younger generation though. Like the younger generation, like 13 and under, they still want those superheroes.
Well, okay, how are you talking? Like,
that's what I said, 13 and under.
Well, okay, that's what I'm saying. So like what they're doing is that's made from the movie stuff, right? Is that from the movies or from the comics? I think from the movies.
I think the comic book, but I mean, I'm talking about like me selling to people. Like I'm usually selling to people who are, like you said, that mid-range, they want manga. I'm okay with that. Like manga's the hot thing right now. Yeah. I either get younger than 13 and younger, or
over 35.
35 and up.
No, but see, so what happens is that 13-year-old, they keep going. And then eventually hit like around 14, 15. And where they hit, they're like, okay, well now I want something a bit more popping. And like all their friends are watching Chainsaw Man, or they're watching, Fire Force, or they're watching, Trigun, because why? Because it's readily available. There's animation on Netflix and Hulu for them to watch that stuff. It's all facilitated like that. For example, so I teach high school kids, okay, like, in the inner city. Almost all of them kids are into manga and anime. And you say, hey, man, how about a Spider-Man comic? They want to read the Spider-Man comic. They think it's like corny or old-fashioned. I'm not even lying to you about that. Meanwhile,
no, I believe you.
They're running around wearing like Naruto. I'm talking about like kids in the inner city, man. Like, some of them are gang members. They're running around wearing like Naruto headbands or like Dragon Ball Z shirts. They love it because the animation brings them in. And once the animation hooks them, they're manga fans now, because eventually they're going to say, hey, you know what? I want to read some. Here's some manga, man. And it just goes from that to that. But I don't
think that's going to change, though, because it's the subject matter, though. Like, because
I don't think it's going to change.
But what I'm saying is the subject matter of manga and stuff isn't necessarily like superheroes. Sometimes it's different. Like they have some, but it's not like
yeah.
It's not like secret identities and stuff like that.
Well, so what manga and anime do is that they take the formula and they keep twisting it. So, for example, if you watch Jujutsu Kaisen and then you watch Chainsaw Man, it's kind of the same story where you're dealing with like a guy dealing with demons. But Kaisen does it in a way where the guy becomes cursed by eating like, a demonic finger. The other guy is like an entire world that's been conquered by demons, and he has to, he's like a hunter within this world. So you have the same kind of, concept, but it's morphed in such a way that you can have fans who love JJK and love Chainsaw Man. But then on top of that, you have My Hero Academia, which is like an old-fashioned superhero comics and stuff like that, where you can get involved in that. It just has, and there's Chainsaw Man. Yeah, I do Chainsaw Man as well. So very well, I might add. But anyway, you just have so many different layers of concepts. Whereas, unfortunately, Marvel and DC, it's like, okay, here's Batman. Here's Batman's sidekick Robin. What are they doing?
But that's what I mean.
Fighting crime.
That's what I mean, though. But again,
it just has that ingenuity. Well, you know what I mean.
This is where Image is winning, right?
Oh, you mean comic?
in comics. Image is winning because they're not doing wholly superhero stuff. They're doing Walking Dead, and they're doing like different concepts that are easily translatable to TV and stuff like that. That are in different genres that people who, because I run into people all the time where they're like, yeah, I don't buy superhero comics.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, what do you like? And they were like, well, I like horror. I like this. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Image, with their diversity, and I would say independent comics as a whole, I think this is the opportunity to break through and to get those people who watch anime, who don't necessarily, because a lot of the times the people that I talk to who watch anime, most of the time they just don't do superheroes. Like that's what they tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, bet. And then you kind of show them something that's not really superhero. Like that's why I've been saying is that my next book, after to finish this book, is going to be something totally different. It's going to be something outside of it, and it might sell like gangbusters to people who want nothing to do with superheroes. But I think that's where like manga has they are able to reach. They're like, you know what it is? Manga right now reminds me of like grunge.
Like grunge
music.
Oh
no. I'm just talking about how it was like the wave of popularity at the time, not the subject matter and the feeling. I'm just talking about how like I'm talking about how as a genre it was reaching art like fans who weren't really necessarily into like rock and roll, but you know what I mean? I'm talking about how it hit as opposed to the topic matter and the genre. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, so I mean, the thing is though, is that manga's been around for about 25 years now.
Too. You could say hip hop too.
Yeah, but
manga's been around, but it wasn't as big as it is in the US, say in like the 90s, early 2000s.
It was huge in the 90s and 2000s.
Not in the comic book industry, like you weren't seeing people
hip-hop?
walking around. No, not hip hop.
Oh, okay.
Manga. Sorry.
Okay, manga. Yeah. Now, so I'll say this. So I'll say manga was starting to become real popular in the 90s because of like Toonami and things like that. You know,
that's what I'm saying. It built, but in the 90s, like in general, I don't think at the comic book industry, I'm only speaking about the comic book industry, people who are going to cons, people who are buying comic books. Yes. In the 90s and the early 2000s, superheroes ruled.
I can agree with that.
Superheroes ruled. Yeah. It was it. And it
but,
wasn't until
because that was purely their territory. There were really the first early anime conventions were very much their own thing, and none shall the two ever meet. And that has now changed. It was a niche and a niche.
That's exactly. But my point being is there's a generation of people who grew up on Toonami and Dragon Ball Z coming on every day, and all these animes that started to break through Cartoon Network and all these other avenues. And once streaming services hit, like I think streaming services did more for anime than anything, because now you see a lot of
easy
cartoons.
Access.
Yeah, easy access. So now you have a generation of people who grew up on Toonami. Now I got further access through streaming industry, which is why you're seeing the wave of people in that age range that we talked about being I'm in the anime, like like I don't really matter. I don't really rock with that.
But my thing though is that I'm not seeing it slow down at all. I mean, I still see it turning as strong as it did before, because I
don't think it will slow down.
Yeah, I mean, like Demon Slayer and My Hero Academia, I mean, that stuff is like red hot. I mean, and I just don't see it slowing down.
Understanding in Japan has just completely gripped, and it seems to continue to build. Now, interesting thing about that, it's the series, even though the animation is going on, the actual manga is done, and it's still building. That guy, the person who's created, he's moving on and he's creating something new.
That's true too, James.
What I would like to bring up is the idea that I think the initial question was brought up more so out of the idea that maybe it's not that you have to completely get rid of one delivery system or the other, but maybe there should be some experimentation. Ultimately,
but there
both
has
Western
been though.
and
Like
Eastern
I hate to
format.
interrupt you, but they're doing like Marvel and DC are kind of doing it right now. And if you really look at the direct market and look at the trade paperback market, the collection market, and we just talked about this, how they're doing like
YA
stuff.
stuff. Yeah, the
Not
YA
even
stuff.
just a. I'm just talking with
Mm-hmm.
their main people. What they're doing now is they'll say Al Ewing, Joe Bennett, you do Immortal Hulk. They did Immortal Hulk from 1 to 50. It had a start and a finish, and they were done. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's collected in volumes. And now, if I want to read Immortal, I could sit there and read 1 to 50 and be like, I got a full story and walk away. That's what they're doing.
Sure.
Now. Like they did that with is it Tom Taylor? Not Tom Taylor. What is the dude's name? Who did Batman?
Tiny? I can't remember his name.
Anyway, he did Batman, and he did it for X amount of books. He did his X amount of books. They collected them, and they're collecting them super fast now.
Mm-hmm.
So after the first 6 issues, boom, trade is out.
So with X-Men as well.
Right.
Yeah.
They're doing it super fast. So that's what I'm saying. Like, tell them about your manga version versus full trade versus visual. Tell away what you experienced. I think you told me this before. You said this on the last show. I think.
Did I? Well,
go ahead. Tell us.
Well,
we can go over tonight. I'm all right with it. I like the conversation.
So what I did was I had 2 different versions of Legend of Azure as a book. I had the manga size, and I had like the standard trade size. And the manga size just so like crazy. It's so much better.
Define manga size to me.
So manga size is kind of like almost, I'm trying to find it.
Like the small little book?
It's not a small, well, it's like novel size.
Yeah.
Size of a novel. I can't find it. I don't have examples on my table here.
But I know. Like my daughters have them. My daughters have them upstairs.
Yeah. And they sold a lot better than like the larger trade. And I think because I read about, thank you, digest size. And I think what happened was that people saw that and said, you know what? I can take this smaller book. I can throw it in my backpack. I can put it in my pocket. I can do more things with it versus the larger trade.
Are they cheaper to make? I'm just curious.
And they're also cheaper to make too. So
was it black and white?
No, that was color.
Okay.
It was a color. But had the same feeling of like a manga size. So it was nice. And people they sell like hotcakes. They sell way faster than trade. They sell way faster than floppies.
But you tap into that market though. You tap into that manga market with your style.
Stylistically, yeah.
Stylistically, if you and me are at a con, everybody's going who's wearing Naruto and everything are going to your table, and everybody who's dressed up as Black Panther is going to mine. But 9 times out of 10, the people who are dressed in the Black Panther will go to yours too. Mm-hmm. But the people who are dressed in Naruto won't come to mine.
Yeah.
That's actually not true. Let me take that back. Because you've seen my banner.
Yep.
My Heat banner.
Yep. And
somebody saw it and it's like, man, they look like Dragon Ball Z. And I was like, yes, it's just like Dragon Ball Z. I lied right to the face. He bought the book though.
Yeah.
He bought the book.
Yeah, well, see, and that's why as indie artists, I still do fan art. I think some people make mistakes when they say, hey, I'm just going to do my indie comic, no more fan art.
I do fan art.
Yeah. I think as indie artists, man, as indie creator, you got to have fan art at your table because that helps pay for the table. It brings the customer in. It sells the person on your artwork. That prevents you from having to be a carnival barker the entire show. If I'm at a show and I look up and I see someone looking at my art behind me and come to my table and flip through my art, that means my art's already hooked them in. So like half the battle is already won. Now you just got to close the deal. Versus, if they're like walking by, you got to say, hey, man, hey, you like comics? Let me give you the pitch. I mean, it's just easier, with fan art. And again, and again, fan art pads the wallet. Let's say your show ain't going too well book-wise. If you sell 15, 16, 20 prints, table's paid for, man. Everything else.
How much
just
you selling your prints for?
15.
15? Okay.
Yep.
So I had a quick story about that. I was selling my prints for like 10.
Yeah, I used to do that.
And I did a whole con selling my prints for 10. I did a couple of cons selling my prints for 10. And then the young lady was sitting across from me, and she was selling prints, and her prints were like smaller, but she did a lot of manga stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She was selling for like 20, 25.
Mm-hmm.
And she came at the end of the con, she came up to me. She's like, "Are you really selling your prints for $10?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "You need to up that to like 15, 20. And I was like, "I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like people." She's like, "Listen, if they'll buy it for 10, they'll buy it for 15.
That's right.
Next con I did 15. I sold pretty much the same amount of prints.
You made more money each.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
More money.
The weird thing about that is that if you're selling prints for cheaper than anybody else around you, people will actually view your prints as lesser quality.
Yeah.
Because you're selling for cheaper. So they don't view it as you're getting them a deal. They view it as something's wrong with your prints. It's like some weird mental jack-up thing people say.
Weird to me, but go off. I guess.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing about a
weird.
comic book, though. If you sell your book for $3, I mean, like a lot of people will look at it like, why is it $3?
Yeah, why is he selling for 10? Something's going on with it.
I won't lie.
Yeah.
I tend to go off of if I like your art style because I look at
I
it.
agree with
you.
I mean, not everybody.
Not everybody.
I will say though, I bought like the big
the print wall.
Yeah. So and
I do that, and this year I've been away from that. This year I'm done with the print wall. This year I'm cutting.
No,
it
why?
Oh, what, the print wall?
Yeah,
I'm getting rid of it because it takes too long to put up, takes too long to take down. It's a hazard, and also like the prints on the wall began to collapse and fade and get all jacked up. It's just not, to me. It doesn't look professional anymore. It looks like amateur hour.
What are you gonna do now?
I'm gonna put like a banner behind me of my art, like the art of Mason Easley. More branding, more like, hey, my characters up there.
For me though, because then the reason why I do it is because I like it. Is because
nothing wrong with it, man. I mean, if you need to do it, you can do it. I mean,
I think I'm just gonna laminate. I'm just gonna laminate my photos though. Like
mine are laminated too.
Oh, they are.
It's just over time though.
Wear and tear.
It just wears down. Yeah, but
I'm with you though. Like it's easier. It's so much. It's so much easier.
Get the banner, just pull it right on up. Bam, it's ready to go.
But even that, like just having the wall of prints, like. Yeah, I still got to do the bark at people thing, and honest to God, I do hate it. But a lot of times, like somebody will just like it. I don't generally bark at somebody. I usually like if they look back, if they're like you know how people walk by, they're walking, and then they're looking backwards. Then I'll be like, man, you can come on over here, man. Like I try not to bark as much. Sure. Yeah, and I have my portfolio up.
Yes.
That's what I do, even though I hate it because it takes so much friggin' space.
Yes, I have two.
Oof, Javon, I've noticed when you don't, like you said, you don't necessarily bark, but and I even picked us up when I started doing it when I was helping you, is comment on.
Hey, grandma! Hey, my grandma's watching.
Oh,
hey, grandma!
Hey, grandma!
Man, I gotta stop cursing. I wasn't cursing, Grandma. I didn't curse. Not this show. Yeah, don't watch Top 5.
No.
Oh man. Oh, go ahead, Jamar.
Engage.
Hey,
but yeah, you would comment on someone's costume, or something would kind of catch with that, and you weren't doing the whole "Hey, come on over here." And I started doing that, and it just became conversations, and was a lot easier to deal with. As opposed to, like you said, three ring circus kind of deal, where some people, they really were like too aggressive walking around and seeing that for the first time. I will also say this, kind of going back to the whole, and I don't think it should be a versus thing, but it is something to consider. I have two bookshelves in my classroom. I've got my books on one side where it's stuff that I've collected over the years. But down on the lower end, I've got one side's manga, one side's trades, DC, Marvel, some independents, and I'm trying to find more indie stuff lately because you all are making stuff, and I want to expose my students to that.
Buy my book.
The side that's always getting picked up, it's the manga stuff. All of my manga stuff, those are the ones I've seen them. They will pick up, look at the superhero stuff, pop it down, pick up, look at the manga stuff, and then they take that and that's the one they start reading, or they come and ask me, can I borrow this for the day or something like that.
Yeah, man, it's weird. I got the same experience, man. Even though it's black and white, even though the art's a lot more simple, there's just something, and I think part of it, honestly, is the size. Like, just that digest size makes it easier to consume for people. I could be totally wrong about that. But I think
The
it's
media
that.
center tells me the same thing.
Is it
The
that?
media center specialist, that's by far and away the thing that gets checked out in the media center is
Is the
everything from the manga. The comic stuff is right behind it.
Sure.
But she keeps the comic stuff on one set, and then there's another set that trade comic stuff, and those are the two most popular sections of the library, and everything else is pretty much just there.
And real quick, I think an issue that we might face as indie creators is that those of us who aren't really so like, if the youth is going more towards like a digest trade model, a lot of us who are doing indie comics are kind of forced to doing floppies because of cost and because of time. We're going to have problems, bringing over that audience into what we're doing. And I'm seeing that quite a bit, actually.
And I'm telling you, the webtoons thing is a big deal because, again, my kids, they're coming and showing me webtoon stuff now.
Yes.
So they're bringing that to me. They're not bringing me manga books or new stuff very, very much, but they're always, have you read this? Solo Leveling, that was a manga series.
That's huge.
That's gotten big, and it's getting an animation, and that's bringing in other stuff because Solo Leveling, I think it's not even Japanese.
It's Korean. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, it's Korean. It's getting its own animation adaptation.
Yes.
So it's something to consider. It's something that could lead to.
I do think it's funny though. I will say this though. I will say I do think it's funny that at a time where, like you said, like anime is kind of taking over from a reader's point of view. The Marvel stuff on the media scale, on a larger scale, is taking off, and people like that. And I do wonder if there is a bit of, I can go watch the movie and I don't have to read another issue. I can just wait for the next movie.
In a lot of ways, I think that's,
you know what I mean. Like I can, like it. I think, and this is where America differs, right? Like the person who goes and watches, like I've met so many people at cons who say they love the MCU, and I'm like, what comics do you read? I don't read comics.
Yep.
And I'm like, but it's different, with manga and stuff like that in Japan and Tokyo, yada yada yada, where the same people are digesting the same content. Whereas I think here it's just that
you got
like
groups.
You said, like you said, there's the disconnect because somehow people rationalized it in their brains that the movies are for adult consumption and the comic books aren't.
Yes.
And I don't know how the hell that happened.
Well, I'd say from the art side of things.
Sense,
well, from the art side of things, again, when I'm doing commissions for people, usually I'm drawing female Marvel and DC characters because the buyers are usually older men with a lot of income, a lot of disposable income. So they want a picture of Wonder Woman, wearing, her old-fashioned, scantily clad outfit, and they're willing to pay hundreds of dollars for that piece of artwork to put on their wall. And, they're just collectors. So I do worry that the current comic market we're dealing with, because, all the variances of that, I am wondering if that a lot of that is built on just, a collector's market versus like a reader market. You know what I mean? So like who's actually reading the books? Kind of like with us in Kickstarter, how many people are actually reading our books versus collecting our books? And I think that could be an issue. Whereas with the MCU, you're watching a movie, you're watching a film, you're absorbing it more. You get into the characters, and it's just a different experience. Whereas if you're buying let's say you're buying X-Men #1, the reboot, and it has like 20 variant covers. You're looking for that sketch cover to get
Yeah.
to get your favorite artist to draw on it. You want that Campbell cover because it has Stella looking
Yeah.
sexy. You want that cover by so and so. So guess what? You just bought 4 books. To
Right.
Marvel, it's like we sold 4 books. You
Right.
really didn't. You really sold 1 book 4 times.
Yeah.
And that's the market we're dealing with now. And once again, on the indie side of things, we're doing it on any side. We're saying, hey man, look at all these variants I got for you. And that's just pumping up our numbers on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
versus manga, like Jamari said, sorry, I got your name wrong. Kids are actually reading the manga, absorbing the manga, becoming fans of the manga, lifelong fans. And that's, I think that's disconnect. That's the problem,
Now, I
JM
will say-
JM says there is because the big two keep doing convoluted events and reboots, no decent entry point. I actually disagree with that on that. No, there's no decent entry point. I think it behooves if a little kid comes into the store, or even if you're 15, 16, you come into the store and you're like, yo, I love that Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man Homecoming and da 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 da. You where's something like that? If you're at that register, you got to be able to answer that question, answer it well. You got to be like, you know what? Read Ultimate Spider-Man. You'll love that.
Yeah.
If you like, oh, I loved Avengers. Like, where can I read something like that? Go read Ultimates. Go read Avengers with George Perez and Kurt Busiek. Like, the whole thing about there not being an entry point is silly because we literally existed for decades without having real decent entry points in the comic books. Like, if you think about it, like when you picked up your first comic, probably wasn't. You still there, Mason? Okay.
I'm still, yeah.
Okay, I thought you were frozen. When you think about your first comic book, it was probably number 265, some random issue that you didn't know what was going on, but you read it and you're like, okay, I like the art, I kind of vibe, I kind of want to know what's going on. Either let me go back and find more issues or let me just keep reading. And now we're living a time where there's so many trade paperbacks that this whole idea that you can't get caught up or understand, or whatever. I think it's a fallacy. It's just something that we like to lean on. But the truth is, it's never been easier to get caught up on anything. Like the comic book store I go to, they have this huge trade section and you can get anything you want. And it's literally like I go in there sometimes and I literally get overwhelmed because I want everything. But like it's just about how do you, as somebody who is it was reprints and collections, yeah. Like how do you we need to do a better job, and I say we as an industry need to do a better job. You had to go back to your Ultimate Universe 4 and dude, I just said you could do Kurt Busiek and George Perez's Avengers run. If you like the Avengers, like that's a great run to start at. But I think we as a said the one event. Okay, let me finish and then I'll. We have to do a better job of helping people understand that there is something for everybody, and to not focus so much on I need the number one and focus so much on look, this is a great story right here. Start. Like I'll never forget. I went to I almost said Dave & Buster's, Barnes and Nobles, and there was this couple, and they were looking through the comic section, and I could hear them like, I don't know what he wants to read, da, 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 da. And so I can hear them. So I'm a comic book creator. I want to help. So I go, hey, y'all need some help with anything? I don't work there. But I'm like, let me help you. Oh, my, he likes the Avengers movies. Okay, bet. I was like, here, take this, take this, take this. He'll love. I gave him the Infinity Gauntlet. Hey, buddy, you coming to say goodnight? All right.
Oh,
y'all talk amongst yourselves. Come here.
Oh, the little man.
I would
say hi. Grandma's watching. Say hi, Grandma.
Hi, Grandma.
All right. Go to bed. You see him? This is how you get the next generation in there. You see that? I do my part. All right,
There you go.
I'm lying. He don't read no books.
So
Close the door. Close the door. But my point,
yeah.
the point being is that you're finding an entry point. You can find an entry point. Like if you like the Incredible Hulk, but you like horror, I would be like, try the Immortal Hulk. I'm using that because I used to do it.
I will say this real quick, but so there's a difference. So I did jump on X-Men 257. That's when I jumped on, became an X-Men fan.
I was close. It was close.
But the difference is though is that when I jumped on the X-Men books, you had Chris Claremont had been on the books for decades at that point. And his run was still going on strong, and it had a pretty, so there was a consistent story, a consistent artist.
Yeah, but it was very convoluted.
It was convoluted, but at the same time, though, the story was still moving on. So, for example, when I jumped in, it was Wolverine versus the Mandarin, and basically he was trying to free Psylocke from the Mandarin's control.
I got that book.
So when we see Psylocke Wolverine again in Jubilee, they pop up in Genosha during Extinction Agenda.
Extinction Agenda.
And so all that's flowing together. So, the story is ongoing. So even though I jumped in at a certain point, my jump in point was the beginning of a storyline. Now, the problem nowadays is like, if you jump in a storyline now, let's say you jump in at number 1. Let's say you're really into Children of the Atom, that horrible book that came out a couple years ago. Actually, I think it came out last year. It was a 6-issue miniseries. And now it's over, it's done with. And there's nothing else to the story anymore. So now you're kind of lost in limbo. And I'm going to tell you this right now. When this entire thing with Krakoa ends, when the MCU starts building up the X-Men, when that ends, I can almost assure you, all that stuff that we got about Krakoa is going to be washed away. A lot of those characters are going to be washed away. And it's going to be like a very core group of characters to help push that movie. That's what's going to happen.
To be fair for the X-Men, to be fair, the X-Men has been almost one continuous storyline, even with Claremont leaving. Like you can draw a straight line. Like they've done reboots, but like, and I think people use the term reboot for just starting with a new number 1. A lot of times they're just continuing the story. It's not a reboot to me is like, Superman is white. Now Superman is black. Like that's a reboot to me.
Well,
like,
they've got those soft reboots,
you know what I mean?
Where the soft event reboots that have DC is.
Well, like Jean Grey dies over and over again, stuff like that, where every other event Jean Grey has to die, or Phoenix comes back, and then Jean Grey comes back as like a younger version of herself, as a new character, and then that character dies, and then we just keep on going, and it's just like a loop.
So,
but you also have to take into account that the people who are doing the books now were fans before, so they're getting their opportunity to leave their mark on characters.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but a lot of them. I mean, they're fans of comics. Like, I mean, I don't know why you would write X-Men if you don't like X-Men. Or why you would write a character. I mean, yeah, but you don't really have to. They're not forcing you.
Well, like who's that guy who wrote 12 Years a Slave? I guess he's writing Black Panther now. That man doesn't like
Black Panther. Whether he did a good job or not is a entirely different story.
He did a horrific job.
I haven't read it. I've only read.
That book is toilet paper. Just FYI. I mean, that man don't know his character. That man. I mean.
Man.
Again.
I'll play devil's advocate.
Oh man.
The manga genre and the manga industry definitely has its own bad practices.
Hey, I'm not burning no bridges, man. I've not read that. Listen, I have not read it.
Look.
But you know what?
Not every slave. It was great.
Not every run is for me. Not every run is for me. Not every run is for. Like, I'm not. There are runs on Black Panther that I'm not a fan of. I'm not going to say which ones because there's
that's why it keeps getting canceled over and over again. It keeps getting canceled because it's not.
Unfortunately, that ain't the reason why he keeps getting canceled.
Okay, well we can go with that.
I think in my opinion, the reason he gets canceled is there are a lot of black folks out there who like to complain about having black characters, but you ain't putting black dollars down for the book. And I will call names. There, like I have said, I have not read John Ridley's book. I actually that's not true. I read the first issue and I was like, it's not really for me. Like I didn't say it was bad. I just said it's not really for me. But
Not
if
for
you're
a lot
not
of people.
putting, but if you're not putting black dollars, I have bought Christopher Priest's run.
That was a good run.
Reginald Hudlin's run. I have bought Tanahashi. Did I say his name right?
Yeah, Coates. Yep.
Coates. I bought Coates run. I got the majority of Coates run. So I got my dollars have gone to the book, but there are a lot of black folks who like to talk about black characters being out there, and that goes for independents too.
Here we go.
So I'm just saying there are a lot of people who are complaining on the internets who have not put a black dollar on a black book, but complain about books that they're not reading.
I'll tell you this right now. As a creator, I would say probably 95% of my audience has been white. I mean, I'll just keep it real with you. I mean, people at my table who buy my stuff, and I'll take that back. Probably more like 98%. I'll be real with you. 98% of them are white folks who buy my books, who buy my prints, who buy my art. I'll get one or two, maybe a show, who are black. I hate to say that, but
Mason, I put pictures up from every con that I do. If I did percentages, it's a lot higher than like I've had black people like, hey, come on over and take a look at my book. And they'll look at me and they'll just walk. And in my mind, I can't even process that because
while they're wearing meanwhile, they're wearing a Dragon Ball Z shirt or a Naruto shirt or something. I'm just saying.
It's not a lie. Well, I had a family. I'll never forget this family. I don't care. They didn't buy my book. So this family, they were dressed up as all the, it was a mother, a father, and like two kids.
I've seen
and
I've probably seen that family.
And they were dressed as Bishop and Storm and all the black characters. And I was like, hey, come on over and take a look at my book. The mother and the father looked at me, looked at each other, kept walking. They didn't say one word to me. But you got the nerve to sit and rock all this stuff. And I bet you to one of the same people talking about, man, there's not enough black characters.
Yeah.
I'm on a rant right now. I'm saying my rant. I don't care. Because I get really tired of people who don't walk the walk, who like to talk. Like, I back Kickstarters. I just got something from Malachi Bailey on her that I got to send in so I can get my book. I don't back all of them, but either I back them or they come on this show.
Sure, that's right.
There are a lot of people who aren't supporting black artists and black characters, but want to complain that we don't have enough black characters and we don't have enough black artists.
I can't fault you on that, man. That's been my experience as well.
Anthony, I'm gonna check that out. Don't worry, I'm gonna make sure that's working. But I'm just saying there's a lot of people, and when that whole and the reason why I say that is because we had the whole thing about the Black Panther panels from John Ridley's book, and they were like posted up, and people were flipping their freaking minds out. And I kept asking, "Did you read the book?" Most of them probably haven't. And they're like, no, I didn't read the book. So I was like, so you're upset about a book with no context. Yeah. And I got so angry. I was like, I'm going to go read the book. And I read the book and I was like, within the context of the book, there's nothing really wrong outside of maybe the look on Cap's face.
It's a pretty stupid story, to be fair.
I mean, I'm not doing that.
It's a retread.
I'm just saying, like, within the context of the story, it made sense, and I get really annoyed with that, man. I get really annoyed with that. So I did my rant.
No,
so go ahead, finish up.
Well, and I agree with you, and and it does make you wonder: should we, as creators, put a lot of our eggs in the basket of like creating all these black characters, all these black comics, if the audience isn't really there? Support it, you know what I mean? Because I mean, all black teams and all black indie comics can turn off other audiences. They might say, hey, you know what? This book looks great, but all the characters are black. Maybe this book isn't for me. Just like, if I saw like an all-white comic.
You learn how to like all white groups.
Anthony, I just checked the link.
But I don't like all white groups. I've never liked that. Like, for example, like me personally, I couldn't stand. I hated Fantastic Four because it was all white group. I was an X-Men fan because they were diverse.
Even X-Men
and you
ain't that
made
diverse.
the thing that you wanted
Oh,
to
come
see.
on, man.
Hey, real talk. How many black X-Men we done had?
Okay, but to be fair, okay, so we had Storm, we had Bishop, but beyond all that, though, there
How
was
much time
also
it took
Asian
between
characters.
when we put out Storm and when we get Bishop?
But okay, but again, to be fair, though, you had Asian characters, you had Native American characters, you had and you had white characters. So I mean, it was a very diverse group of people.
They killed the Native American in like the second book he was ever in.
But there was Forge. Forge was Native American too.
How long did it take before we got Forge?
Forge was like around from what, X-Men 100 and something. He's been around for a while.
I just think the diversity that they have is like white diversity.
It can always be better.
It's
like
white diversity. I mean, yeah, I know, but like,
you always ask for more.
When it's better
it's
now
pretty
than
darn
it used
good.
to be. It's better now than what it used to be. I'll say that.
Well, I mean, but I would say like even back in the 90s,
you should always strive for more.
Yeah, but I mean, even back in the 90s, you had a really diverse team versus like, again, Fantastic Four. Okay, it was Storm.
I mean, Fantastic Four is milky white because it came out in 1960.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when I was coming up, and I was like, oh shoot, X-Men. This is a team with black people. It's got Indian people. It's got Asian people. It's got. So I'm gonna check it out because to me, it's a more diverse book than like Fantastic Four or even like the Avengers, which was pretty much just Iron Man and Cap and a bunch of more white characters.
So,
again, X-Men.
Fair enough.
And also, Magneto was a Jew. So even on top of all that, a religious minority with white hair.
Why should black creators worry about turning off white audiences when white creators don't care if they bring in other groups or not, unless they're told?
Yeah, so from a business perspective, if your audience is 95% white, then you have to be careful what you're putting out because that's your buying base. So, for example, if your buying base is 100%, so your buying base is like 98% black, are you going to put out like an all-white team? Probably not, because your audience is going to say, "Well, that's great, but that doesn't really appeal to me."
Yeah.
So for example, let's reverse America's demographics. Okay, 70% of the population is black now. Okay, if you are a white creator creating an all-white superhero team, and your audience is probably like 95% black, would you put that team out? If you're trying to make a business, would you put that team out? I mean, now granted, you could say, hey, we need more representation, but at the same time, you're trying to make money. Now, you can try to appeal for the minority, like, the white minority, but if like, what me and Javon are saying, like, they're not really putting the money where the mouth is, should you really do that? Again, it's totally your choice.
Ultimately you make what you want.
It's a hard choice to make.
Let me be perfectly honest with you. The majority of the people who buy my book, and I had told people this time and time again, and they do not believe me, but you can go check the pictures. The pictures are on my website. Black women, white women.
Yep.
Those are my biggest demographics. And like other minorities, believe it or not.
Yep. I agree with
white men see this cover. I've seen it time and time again. Sure. They'll go and they'll just walk off. Now every now and again, you get the really, for lack of a better term, woke white guy, and they're like, "Man, I gotta get this," and they're super excited, and I'm happy. Like, bet, get my book. But black women and white women come out time and time again. Now, black men, I would say I would get like 50% of the black guys who come to near my table buy my book. 50%. Sure. For some reason, the other half don't. And I mean, not every book is for everybody, and I'm not going to sit here and expect everybody. I'm just telling you the people who come and the people who support. And and I'm able to see this. Like every time I scroll through my pictures, I'm like, yep. And white women, for some reason, they they love my character. I don't know what it is. They be down. They be like, bet, let's do it. And so,
Well,
you know,
yeah, and to his point, I mean, I wouldn't say you're doing it to, you know, to you're not doing what you're doing in order to placate a white audience. You're doing what you're doing because, well, A, you want to do it,
right,
and B, it's the best way to get your message across.
right.
If you want to create an all-black team, go for it. Me personally, you know, I'm mixed race. I'm also black, but I'm also a mixed race person. For me, I kind of represent how I grew up. I grew up with white people and other. I mean, I grew up in a very multiracial environment. So for me, you know, I feel like if I want to create a book, I want to be more multiracial. Now, if you're more from like a more solid black experience, obviously you'll say, you know what, I want an all black team because we ain't been represented enough. We need, you know, we need these faces on this cover. We need to show what we can do. More power to you, man.
Right.
But I just do wonder though. It's like if you're making an all black team and the audience is mostly white. I mean, let's be real. It just is. You know,
You got to know your ceiling.
Yeah, it's something you have to consider as a comic creator. That's all I'm saying. I would never say sell out your values to make a buck. Never do that. But obviously, you know, if you're looking to make a business out of it, I mean, it's something you got to think about, especially if you have experience at cons where like the black audience just isn't showing up. And then you're sitting back and saying, well, dude, I mean, I want to devote all this effort and time into this black thing that no one's going to buy. And honestly, I see it a lot, you know, on Facebook, like in the community where people put up like that one cartoon where that black mom wasn't buying that guy's black comic. So, oh, you know what? You know, where's all the black comics at? He said, well, here's your black comic reader. You know, that's cool. But you know what? You know, there's a Little Mermaid over there. Let's go watch the Little Mermaid. And then, you know, so the guy's like sitting with a book in his hand with no audience. It just, you know, it's just something to think about. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like to say it. I think they just like to
sounds
say
good.
it.
Sounds
It
great.
sounds really nice. It sounds like you're tuned in and you're keyed in and I just kind of sit here and I go, you know, again, like
Jordan
when
Peele.
I did this, yeah.
No,
When I did my book, like when I did this cover, like I knew this cover might not be for everybody.
Sure.
Like I knew it. Like I even knew the story matter might not be for everybody. And so I had to go in going, okay, I might not get all the dollars that I want, but I'm invested and I'm enthusiastic about it and I'm a good salesperson, so I could probably rock with you. So if they don't buy this, they'll buy the first books because the first book is more traditional comic book, superhero, yada 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 yada. But I agree with you. Like if you're gonna do a book with all black characters, basically saying some variation of "I'm black, y'all. I'm black, y'all. I'm blackity black. I like black, y'all." Understand that a white guy from the suburbs is probably not gonna want to read it,
or like a white nerd who's like really into comics and everything else. You know, he's like, "Oh, this is great," but you know, he doesn't. You know, he's like, you know, is this really for me? This might not be for me, man.
Right.
And also, oh, sorry.
No, I was
and
just
also,
reading what he said. Weird, how many white folk bought Luke Cage or Power Man? I mean, even Power Man and Luke Cage, they tried to change him to make him thugged out, and that didn't quite work. And so, I mean,
that was never like a huge seller. It was always kind of like a C or D tier title, even back in the day. But like if you look at my cover, for example, for my comic series, you know, a lot of my, you know, I have that multiracial dimension. So, you know, I have to think that, you know, if someone is like looking for the book, say, oh, say, you know, there's a person of color there. That's for me. Oh, there's a white elf there. That's for me. And, you know, I want to get people like something to relate to as they're reading the book. Not that you can't relate to someone who's different than you. I mean,
no, that makes sense.
My favorite character from Star Wars was Han Solo. He's definitely not, you know, a black kid from Columbus, Ohio. But, you know, but I'm not going to lie. When I read X-Men, you know, I felt some affinity towards Storm. I felt some affinity towards Bishop. I just did because they were black people. I felt a lot of affinity towards Sync on Generation X.
I love Sync. I love that. Well, I'm the dude that likes every black character that comes out, even if they're not.
I am too. Well, and I'll tell you why for me an X-Men is because they give the black characters the best powers.
They do though.
They just do. They're just sick. I'm like, that's a dope ass.
But then they kill the crap out of them.
Man, they blew that mother. They blew that mother ever up, man. Sorry, Granny. They blew that dude up. I was like, come on, y'all. You ain't gonna do it like that.
We don't want to hold you too long, but so at the end of
That's
every show, I mean, I've enjoyed the conversation. I really could go
Very
on.
much
You know,
so.
we have really good conversation. You got to come on top 5, man. I don't know why you ain't been on top 5. That's the real debate show.
Yeah.
We got to get you on there.
Okay, cool.
So every show at the end of it, we do top 5, pick a topic. Since you're an artist, I'm gonna roll with this.
Not gonna do coons.
You mean, excuse me, you mean people who problematic individuals who cause damage to the community. That I think that's what you mean. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know what this word that you just said. I just know that it's short for raccoon. All right.
No, man.
I have no idea.
No, go ahead, man. No, yeah. The originally planned programming. Go for it.
Oh, that wasn't my idea, dude. That was all Morgan, dude. I just want people to understand that was Morgan.
Dude, one time I was just like, wow, they're doing it.
I just do it. All I know is I said as soon as he came up with it, I was like, we either getting canceled, sued, or this will be the greatest show ever.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So what we're gonna do top 5 comic book artists, favorite comic book artists.
Okay.
So you need a minute, or are you ready to go?
Oh no, I got it.
All right, go ahead.
Top 5. Here we go. I almost said Thailand. Oh my god, I'm tripping, man.
Thailand.
Easley. Anyway, okay. So all right, Jim Lee.
Okay.
Arthur Adams.
Okay.
Joe Madureira. Todd McFarlane.
Okay.
And the other one is going to be I can't remember her name. Whoever drew Full Metal Alchemist. Oh, I take it back. Let's take out Todd McFarlane and put in Akira Toriyama, the artist of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z.
Okay.
And also the artist of Full Metal Alchemist. I cannot pronounce her name in my life, but yeah, she's definitely one of my favorites. She's amazing.
Okay. All right, Jamari, you think you can do it?
I'm gonna stay on this one. I am not. My artist is not strong enough.
That's fine. That's fine. That's cool. That's cool.
But I do appreciate the nod for the Full Metal Alchemist and
dude, she's amazing.
Toriyama. Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Yeah, Toriyama's. If you guys have ever played Chrono Trigger on SNES way back in the day, the art on that is just, again, Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball Z. And the crazy thing about it is people try to emulate his style. They try so hard, but they just can't do it. And it is the most funky, anatomically incorrect style you could possibly imagine. But he makes it work. It's just incredible. All right, go ahead. One of my favorites. He's a legend, in my opinion.
Okay. All right, let me see. Well, number 1 is George Perez. I love George Perez.
Very classic style.
He just, everything he does, I gotta get, or everything he did, I gotta get. I was so happy when I got to meet him. He actually took my book too. I was
rest in peace.
Yeah. Todd. Everything. Todd was like I felt like he was the king of. You know what? The anatomy don't have to be 100%.
No.
You know, it doesn't have to look uber realistic.
It's the flavor, man.
It's just the flavor and dynamic. Like, I swear he had a black man inside of him doing that artwork, dude. Because when you look at his artwork and you look at like taggers and people who do like murals and I'm losing the word. I can't find the word. But graffiti. When you look at his work, it's very graffiti-like.
Spawn's black, so
he is black. Number 3, excuse me. Favorites. Shoot, I gotta look at my wall now. You know who's a favorite of mine? And I find that how much I try to copy his style. It has such an energy, but it's also it's like nothing else on the stance. Scott McDaniel. I love Scott McDaniel's artwork. When he did Nightwing, it blew my mind. And I spent hours trying to figure out how he did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
Number 3. These are my favorite, not best. Favorite.
Sure. Oh, sure, absolutely. And real quick.
Go ahead.
And,
I gotta look at my collection.
Honorable mention: Mike Mignola.
Oh yes, that's a good one.
I mean that one. I mean, I've Hellboy on my shelf, and just his just the way he does his work, man, it's just phenomenal. You know, just that style. His style is just so like, it's very powerful. I love Mike Mignola, and in fact, one of the pictures you popped up from Legend of Azure was my tribute to Mike Mignola. You know,
okay,
I did it in his style because I love his art so much. Huge influence on me.
JM Hunters says next time you can do all top 5 favorite artists versus top 5 artists directly influenced your work. I mean, I could tell you my top 5 who influenced my work. I could do that right now. Scott McDaniel, Todd Knock, Ron Garney, Scott Collins, and probably Todd. Those, if you look at my artwork, I feel like I got a little bit of all 5 of them.
I can definitely see Todd in your work.
Yeah,
I definitely see Todd influence. I more anything else. I see Todd.
Is Todd and Todd Knock or Todd McFarlane?
McFarlane.
I see a lot of Todd Knock in my work, and I see a lot of Ron Garney. I try to be. I like to be cartoony.
Sure.
Because the book I tell people all the time, the style I do in Heat is a different style than what I do if I sat down and just took time. Yeah. Heat is quickly. So my quick work is cartoony. But like if you see my prints, some of my prints are a lot more realistic.
Sure.
A lot less cartoony because I kind of take my time. Or like if I do like portraits. Like the picture of me on the promo stuff, like that's me taking my time. So I can do realistic and I can do the cartoony, but yeah, like Heat is all Garney, Todd Knock. Scott Collins is huge for me. I was influenced by his Flash run. It like blew my mind. I was just like I finally found an artist who understood the Flash and how to draw the Flash and how to draw super speed. Oh man, I didn't finish what I do. You messed me up. George, Todd, Scott. Shit. Sorry, Grandma. Dog, this is really hard. This is really freaking hard, man. I'm saying Jim. I gotta go. Jim. Jim is amazing. Jim sets the standard. Jim sets the standard for everybody who's doing comic superheroes. Like
I can agree with that.
He is the ceiling. Like, if you think you're better than Jim, you probably lying to yourself. Who else? You know who's really good? I'll say this: he's really good, and I don't get to see enough of his stuff. But I was. Yes, that's a great picture. I know exactly what picture you're talking about. I would say Ron Garney. Ron Garney's not the name that I was thinking, but Ron Garney would be my 5th. But the person I was thinking about who doesn't get enough, oh man, I lost it. But the Kuberts are favorites of mine too, man. Everything they do is just full of energy. Like it doesn't. Sometimes it looks like it bends reality, if you know what I mean. Like.
I never got that from them. I've never. I mean, I respected their work. They were never a favorite of mine.
Oh man,
I'm just like
everywhere, dude. Everywhere.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like about that.
Especially mostly Andy.
Yeah,
I was a big Andy disciple. Like I would try to copy what he was doing. I follow him on everything. I'm telling you, Cat, Romita Jr. Is another inspiration of mine.
Yeah.
I think if you see my stuff, a lot of that angular, John Romita, he's fast as fuck.
Another person who's really amazing is Walt Simonson. If you ever have you ever seen his Thor run, just like the way he does like panel work and the way he does structure his pages, incredible because he was a writer and the artist, and he was like really incredible.
So good, so good. You know who's underrated? He's probably my favorite Superman artist. but not for Superman, but for Steel. John Bogada. How do you pronounce his name? Bogada. I don't know how to pronounce Bogadanovi or something like that.
Never heard of him.
He's the guy. He's one of the guys that created Steel.
Okay.
During the Death of Superman run, he was doing Superman on that. I copied his stuff so much. It was so organic. But like I said, I like stuff that looks like different.
Sure,
like,
sure.
I don't like if there's a house style. The only person whose house style I love, yes, Boganov, yes. The only person who has a house style that I love is only because he's pretty much started it was Stuart Eminem.
Mm-hmm.
And because everybody copies off of him now.
Stuart is good, man.
Everybody copies off of him.
Cold, yeah.
Everybody at Marvel right now, they're looking for people.
His rendering was sick. He has a sick rendering style.
He's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever read his is it Secret Identity?
Mm-mm.
Or Kurt Busiek? Oh man. He does this rendition of Superman, dude. He's so good. He's so good.
I believe
he makes me angry, man. All these artists make me man. Some of these guys make me angry because I'd be like, dog, I gotta get to the drawing board, man. I gotta get better. Like they push me. I don't know how you feel, but I every time I see, like Steve Epting is another good.
It's one of those things where it's like you're on a track, and you're a pretty fast runner, and you're running, and then like you look to the side, and there's a guy just zooming right past you. You're like, damn, how was he so fast? How was he so good?
And they make it look so easy.
It make it look so easy, and and if it doesn't inspire you, it doesn't make you want to do better, then you're in the wrong business. Because
oh my God,
there's always someone better.
What's his name? Who did the Black Panther artist? I can't remember his name. Oh my gosh, I feel he did Ta-Nehisi's run.
I don't remember him.
Brian Stillfreeze. Brian Stillfreeze.
Oh Jesus, yeah. Brian Stillfreeze is
he's so
legend.
good.
He's a legend.
He's
man.
so good. Oh my gosh. Like,
yeah.
I don't think I think it's like I think there are a lot of people. I think artists look at artists differently.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think like Jamari, you're a writer. You look at an artist and you're like, he's so good. I look at him and I'm like, how the hell did he do that?
I think we look at it more like
a math. I can understand
from a technical point of view.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because you guys
like an equation.
It's like talking to Jamal about music.
Right. Like it's just, if you're a singer and you hear like, Brian McKnight sing and you're just like, dude, like
how you do it, and then the musician's like, oh, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Cool. But before we go, coolest thing that happened was Steel Freeze. I met Steel Freeze and I gave him this picture of a Black Panther with what's his name? Why did I forget his name just that quick? The actor who died.
Chadwick.
I'm tired. Chadwick's face on it. And I was like, listen, man, I just want you to know you're my favorite Black Panther artist. I had to get to see you. And he's like, you're not gonna sign it? And him saying that, I don't like it literally, like something in me, like I literally lost it inside. I was like, yeah, sure. And in my mind, I'm screaming.
Sure.
Because Brian Stillfreeze asked me to sign, something for him. So, but like all these artists, I don't know about you, but like I'm chasing all of them,
Absolutely.
And they're all amazing. And you are a freaking amazing artist. Like if I haven't had the opportunity to tell you that, like I'm going through your artwork, like this
thanks, man.
Yeah, dog. Like, come on, man, slow down, dude. Like,
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
I'm just sitting here, like, all right, how did you do this? Like, I was staring at that Chainsaw Man joint for a minute. Like,
can you put that one back up just real quick?
I'm gonna put it up right now. Like, I was just sitting there staring at it, like,
okay,
the colors, the composition, like everything, like it, the sharp edges on the I was just like. And that's why I love doing the show, because I get to talk to people, people more talented than me, and people who I gotta. Hey, man, I'm trying to catch up with you, bro. I'm trying to catch up with you. Hey, listen, man, I'm trying to this. You know, I love talking to great artists because they help me become a better artist.
I
And you know, if
appreciate
you're
that.
not
Thank you, sir.
always pushing, if I'm not pushing to be, you know, as
My
good
head's
as
already big.
listen,
Big enough.
if I'm not pushing to be as good as you, then what am I doing this for? You know, like I'm never gonna get better. So, you know, I always appreciate. Thank you for taking the time to come.
Yeah.
The
Thank you for having
extended
me.
time. That's all right because it
Absolutely.
was such a great conversation. I do appreciate you coming through.
And real quick, guys, shout out 1619 Project on Hulu.
Oh yeah.
Black History Month, episode 3 dropped tonight. I watched episode 1 and 2. Fantastic series, worth your time. Check it out. Hulu.
Man, I gotta get
1619 Project. Yep.
I heard about it though.
I can pick that up.
It's amazing. Worth your
And
time.
if you want any of his products, right below Linktree ME_Mason Easley. Go and get the book, Legend of Azure. What's the other one?
Like your Soldier Kai. That comes out later on
Okay.
in the spring.
Yes,
yeah,
go ahead and get that.
I'm on page 125. So it's almost done. Yep.
And as always, go to visuallystoked.com if you want to support and get heat. The second issue, I promise y'all, I finished the drawing yesterday. I'm lettering it and coloring it. I'm trying to get it out in the next week or two. But thank you all for joining. And hold on, and masterclass is free this month. Oh, really? Oh, all right. Hold on. For those that didn't see, let me do this. Masterclass is free this month. Black History with the author from 1619. Okay. But yes, last thing I'll say is please support Black artists.
Yes.
With Black books and Black characters. Like, be about it. Don't just talk about it. Be about it. Show the support. Share. Do all the social media stuff for them. We all need it. We really do, and we appreciate it because we're doing, and I can't speak for Mason, but I'm pretty sure he kind of goes with me here. All this stuff. And thank you, white lady customers. We appreciate you. We do appreciate it. We appreciate every Karen. I appreciate every single one of you.
Yes.
But we do this from our soul. It's something that we can't help but to do. And just support us, so we can keep doing it. Thank you all for another episode of a Stoked Podcast, Creative Talk of Creative People. And I will see you next Thursday. Who's next Thursday? Let's see who we got. Sean Barber and Kyron Silva.
All right.
Gonna come on and talk. Can't wait. Y'all have a great weekend.